Well, good evening, everyone. I am Mayor Erica A. Stewart, and I'm here to say that 4 of us are here in person. Councilmember Marks will not be here with us today, but she'll be returning in 2 weeks. Don't you worry. We're going to start it off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Shorsman. All right, City Attorney, can you please give us a closed session report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council did meet in closed session on 2 matters. One, real property negotiations matters regarding a property at 975 Broad with negotiating parties as listed on the agenda, on a motion by Mayor Stewart, seconded by Councilmember Boswell, 4-0 with Councilmember Marks absent. The council did authorize staff to enter into real property negotiations and provided direction on price and terms, and there's no further reportable action on that one. And then also on one matter of existing litigation, Ruda et al. Versus City of San Luis Obispo. And on that matter, on the motion of Councilmember Shorsman, seconded by Vice Mayor Francis, on a vote of 4-0, also with Councilmember Marks absent, the council authorized the defense of the action and also authorized staff to retain Attorney Kevin Siegel with the firm of Burke Williams Sorensen to act as outside counsel in defense of the city. And with that, no further reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So today we get to start off with 4 proclamations. So all of us will be reading a proclamation, but I want to make sure you know we're reading a little bit of abbreviated proclamations because we have so many. So please know that the full proclamation is on our website, so you can read the whole thing, and it will also be up here on the screen when we are reading our proclamation. After that, we'll have each person come up and give their 3 minutes of public comment so that you can all learn a little bit more about the organization that we are giving a proclamation for. First off, we have the April as the month of the child, and Vice Mayor will be sharing that. And then Shelby West, if you could raise your hand. Thank you so much, Shelby. On behalf of the SLO County Early Care and Education Planning Council, we'll have you join us up front.
Month of the Child and Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas the City of San Luis Obispo recognizes that every moment in a child's life is an opportunity for learning, discovery, and growth, and that the quality of these early experiences shapes a child's resilience, well-being, and success in school and throughout life. And whereas the City of San Luis Obispo joins community partners, including the SLO County Early Care and Education Planning Council and local family-serving organizations in working towards a future where all families can find and afford quality childcare, and where early childhood professionals are valued for the essential role they play in strengthening our community. And whereas April is recognized nationally as the Month of the Child and Child Abuse Prevention Month, provides an opportunity to celebrate the wonder and promise of childhood while reaffirming our commitment to ensuring that every child grows up in a safe, nurturing environment at home, in childcare, at school, and throughout the community. And now, therefore, I, Emily Francis, Vice Mayor of the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, hereby proclaim April 2026 as Month of the Child and Child Abuse Prevention Month, recognizing the importance of investing in children, supporting families, and working together to ensure that every child has the opportunity to grow, learn, and thrive.
Do I have to press the button? No, okay. Thanks. All right, Madam Mayor and esteemed council members, my name is Shelby West. I'm here representing the San Luis Obispo Early Care and Education Planning Council. The council, in partnership with families and the community, plans for and promotes accessible services of the highest quality for the care of all children and youth. I'm deeply honored to stand here before you today as we recognize April as Month of the Child, a time to celebrate, uplift, and commit ourselves to the well-being of the youngest members of our communities. First, I want to express my sincere gratitude to the City of San Luis Obispo for this meaningful recognition. This proclamation is not just an acknowledgement of the work that we do, but a call to action for all of us to ensure that every child has the opportunity to grow, thrive, and succeed. We also want to thank you for your focus and investment in the childcare business expansion within the City of SLO, and we look forward to further supporting you in your work, reviewing zoning regulations for consideration of how to streamline processes for childcare centers in particular. Your support of childcare over the years has helped to create a connected community for our children and families. It truly takes a village to raise children, as I can attest with my own daughter here, as she has benefited first from our city's early care system and now from our wonderful public schools as well. As we celebrate Month of the Child, let us be reminded that every child deserves love, support, and the chance to dream big. Let's continue our collaboration to break barriers, provide resources, and create a future where every child, regardless of background or circumstance, has the opportunity to reach their fullest potential. Thank you for taking the time this month to pause and reflect on how we can impact our community's children and families in every decision that is made within these council chambers. I am wearing blue today to honor my commitment to preventing child abuse, as April is also recognized as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Blue is worn to show support for all of those agencies working together to promote programs and activities that create strong and thriving children and families. Thank you again for this incredible honor. I accept this proclamation for every educator, parent, mentor, and advocate who works tirelessly to uplift and support our children. When we invest in our children, we invest in a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Councilmember Shoresman declaring Arab American Heritage Month, and Sandra Saruf, on behalf of the Cultural Creations Collaborative, will join us. No? Okay.
She can come up afterwards if she wants to. Okay. Arab American Heritage Month, April 2026. Whereas Arab American Heritage Month is nationally proclaimed in April to recognize the valuable contributions and achievements of Arab Americans who have strengthened our nation, state, and our city. Whereas representing diverse nationalities, religions, and ethnicities from 22 Arabic-speaking countries, Arab Americans strengthen the community through their commitment to family, education, hard work, hospitality, and diversity, while also playing a vital role in advancing social justice and human rights and enriching our society through their contributions to the democratic and entrepreneurial spirit in San Luis Obispo. And whereas Arab Americans remain committed to supporting their loved ones in Palestine facing systemic violence by organizing and advocating for justice, human rights, humanitarian aid, and lasting peace in the region and world. Now, therefore, I, Michelle Shoresman, council member for the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, recognize April as Arab American Heritage Month and the many contributions of our Arab American community members.
Hi. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Sandra Saruf, and I'm honored to be here with my community to accept the city's first proclamation ever recognizing April as Arab American Heritage Month. Thank you for acknowledging the many contributions Arab Americans have made and the many ways we have for generations participated in and shaped life here in San Luis Obispo. 6 years ago, my friend Hala Baki and I were hiking San Luis Mountain, talking about life, community, what it means to be Lebanese, to be Arab, living here in the city. She was new to SLO, and I shared that in over 20 years of living here, I had never seen Arab American Heritage Month recognized, nor events centered on our community beyond a few at Cal Poly. She looked at me and said, well, then let's organize something. So in April of 2020, alongside Farah Al-Nakib, we launched our first series of Heritage Month events. So we did story time at the library, we did a film screening, a panel discussion, and had tea in the park. Since then, with the support of our community, we have continued to create spaces for education, connection, and celebration each year. There's always a balance in this cultural work between educating and celebrating, between correcting harmful narratives and creating space to be seen fully. Too often in our society, Arab communities are portrayed in fragmented and dehumanizing ways through stereotypes that overlook our humanity and reduce us to numbers. What is rarely shown is our resilience, our creativity, our contributions, our deep love of family and community, and our joy. Ours is a culture rooted in hospitality and generosity. To be welcomed into an Arab home is to be cared for in body, heart, and belly. You will never leave our house feeling hungry. We gather, we work, we play, fall in love, adore our children, laugh, cry, tell stories, and build community wherever we are. These are the everyday truths of who we are. And while many in our community carry the weight of injustice done to our people, from intolerance and discrimination to genocide and the destruction of our homelands, we are more than those tragedies. Here in San Luis Obispo, we are your neighbors, doctors, artists, students, entrepreneurs, and public servants, many of whom are in this room this evening. So this proclamation matters because it helps us to be seen in our fullness as human beings who show up with care and commitment to our local community. And in that spirit, we invite you to join us for some events honoring Arab American Heritage Month. This Thursday, we're doing verbatim theater at the community library. The Moutini installation is in display at the second floor of the library. And we welcome you into our, I'm cut off completely. Okay, am I? We welcome you into our spaces, and thank you so much for seeing us and creating space for us.
Thank you so much. I wish there was like a cute chime for, the proclamations versus the loud beeping. So thanks for your patience with us. And next we have Councilmember Mike Boswell will be declaring April as Earth Month to Laura Albers on behalf of the SLO Climate Coalition.
Thank you. Earth Month and honoring SLO Earth Fest 2026. Whereas the city has established ambitious climate goals reflecting the community's commitment to meaningful climate leadership and long-term environmental stewardship, and whereas the SLO Climate Coalition has helped bring together a broad network of local organizations, including EcoSLO, the Santa Lucia chapter of the Sierra Club, Cal Poly College Corps, and Making SLO, to accelerate climate action, foster public engagement, and support implementation of solutions aligned with the city's climate goals. And whereas SLO Earth Fest 2026, being celebrated on April 18th at Santa Rosa Park, provides a meaningful opportunity for community members of San Luis Obispo to celebrate environmental stewardship, highlight climate solutions, and inspire action in support of a sustainable future. Now, therefore, I, Mike Boswell, council member of the city of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire city council, hereby proclaims April 2026 as Earth Month and recognizes and celebrates SLO Earth Fest 2026 for its leadership in promoting environmental awareness, climate action, and community collaboration.
Okay, on behalf of Slow Climate Coalition, thank you for this recognition of Earth Month and for lifting up Slow Earth Fest 2026. This proclamation reflects something we see every day, that real climate progress happens locally and through partnership. The city's climate action plan sets an ambitious and necessary vision, and it's only possible because of the many organizations, volunteers, businesses, and residents working together to bring it to life. And you'll see many of those partners here tonight showing up in support of the city's climate action plan update and a continued commitment to this important work. EarthFest is one expression of that collaboration. It's a space where our community can connect, learn, and take action, where climate solutions feel tangible, hopeful, and within reach. And in a moment when the national conversation can feel heavy, even discouraging, this matters. Because here in San Luis Obispo, we are reminded that local action still works, that community still works, and that a resilient future is something we are actively building together. We invite everyone to join us on April 18th at Santa Rosa Park and to engage in Earth Month in whatever way feels meaningful to you. Thank you, board, council members, mayor, for your leadership, your partnership, and your commitment to a healthy, resilient future for our community.
And last but not least, we have the Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation. Many of us are wearing the teal ribbon in recognition of Sexual Assault Awareness Month as for April. And this has a special meaning as I used to get to work with a lot of the SAFER students and advocates at Cal Poly, and really glad to be able to share with this proclamation. So whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month calls attention to the fact that sexual assault is widespread and impacts every person in San Luis Obispo. Lumina Alliance continues to provide a safe environment to those affected by sexual assault with a 24-hour crisis line, advocacy, therapy, transitional and emergency housing, and prevention education with the help of dedicated volunteers and professionals. Lumina Alliance has had a dramatic increase of hotline calls by more than 30% over the past year and recognizes that more than 45% of women have experienced sexual violence in the United States, which accounts for 63,000 women in San Luis Obispo County. So now, therefore, I, Erica A. Stewart, Mayor of the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, in recognition of the important work done by domestic violence programs, do hereby proclaim the month of April to be the Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Maggie, I'll meet you up front.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart and the City Council members for this proclamation. My name is Maggie Torres, and I am on the Board of Directors for Lumina Alliance. For over 45 years, Lumina Alliance has been a steadfast source of support for survivors of sexual assault and intimate partner violence. Our mission is to empower those impacted through innovative advocacy, healing, and prevention programs. We provide a 24-hour crisis and information line, advocacy and accompaniment, legal referrals, emergency shelters, transitional housing, self-sufficiency services, individual and group therapy, and a comprehensive prevention program. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, a time dedicated to uniting communities in the fight to end sexual violence. First launched in 2001, this month has grown into a powerful movement of advocacy, collaboration, and education. More than 20 years later, it remains a vital opportunity to raise awareness about the impacts of sexual violence, both locally and nationwide, while working toward a safer, more just future. This year, we are shining a light on the resilience of survivors and the often overlooked realities of sexual violence in our community. While anyone can experience sexual assault, some groups, including undocumented individuals, transgender people, and those living with disabilities, face unique barriers to safety and support. This April, we reaffirm our commitment to ensuring that every survivor is seen, heard, and empowered. Together, we are illuminating pathways to a future where all survivors have the resources and support they need to heal. Please remember, if you or anyone you know is experiencing sexual or intimate partner violence and needs help, please call 805-545-8888 to speak to one of our confidential advocates. In closing, we are so grateful for this proclamation and your ongoing support. On behalf of Lumina Alliance's Board of Directors, staff, and volunteers, we thank you all for taking action this month to create a safe, thriving, and equitable community. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to everyone who came out for these proclamations and also for the rest of the attendees for the meeting, just to be able to experience these amazing things. Come next meeting, not next week, next meeting, we also have 4 proclamations, which is not normally the thing. But I just wanted you to know also, if you do wish to put in a proclamation, we do have a place for ceremonial documents, and that is online. So you can always request a proclamation for something that you are interested in. And with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to move on to the public comment for items that are not on the agenda. But I'm going to give just a few minutes for people if they wish to head out, that they're not like feeling trapped. So go for it, enjoy, take a picture of the City Hall, whatever you would like to do.
Mayor?
Yes.
City manager report?
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get back to this. Sorry about that. So city manager's report is next, which I'm very excited about because we always have so much going on that's not even on the agenda that our city manager gets to share. So thank you very much. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. We do have just a few slides this evening, so we're hitting some highlights. First up, we want to make sure folks are aware that our business license renewal season is kicking off. I'm sure what everyone's waiting for, hopefully they are. For all of our business community, you've hopefully received some kind of outreach from us. We've gone through a process here where we first let everybody know that we're kicking off the renewal process, and we want to start that by seeking verification that everyone's contact information is correct, so that if you've got an email address or your physical address has changed, if you're no longer operating any longer, we really want to hear from you. Otherwise, we will keep reaching out and assume you're still operating and could be potentially increasing fines over time if we don't hear from you. So first, we want to make sure that we have the right contact information. We send that information out to, we currently have 8,110 businesses registered in our city, and so that's a lot of outreach. We've heard back from about 900 operators to date. Just to remind everybody what the process entails, we kicked off the renewal process formally in early May, so you're able to get online or come in person or provide that renewal by mail beginning at the beginning of May. And we look to get those renewals by the end of July, and so that folks can avoid any fines that might accrue after that point. So please keep an eye out for that. Any business operators in our community, let us know where you're at. Make sure your contact information is correct, and then look to renew your business license. It is $44.58 per business, so we want to make sure people are aware that is the going rate of our business licenses at this point in time. If you have any questions whatsoever, please reach out to our finance staff. via email at bt@slowcity.org or by phone at 781-7143, or you can come to the counter downstairs at City Hall Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., answer any questions or get your business license renewed or pay in person. Those are always options. So we want to make sure everyone's aware, and please reach out with any questions. Going along on the business theme, we wanted to give some highlights of a number of new businesses that have opened or relocated inside the city in the last 6 months or so. Over the past 6 months, 6 new dining destinations have opened across San Luis Obispo, 7 new retail additions, and 2 new additional employers who have been listed up on the screen there. We want to make sure folks are aware these are new people to town, new businesses to town. We're really grateful that they've chosen to locate here in San Luis Obispo. I'm excited to have them here and providing services and support to our community, amazing food, drink, and good places to shop. So please check those out, and we're really happy to again welcome our new businesses. Next up, our Community Development Department is going to be shifting their counter hours, and we want to make sure everybody is aware of that. We're really looking to simplify the process. We can't tell you how many times folks come in between the county and the city. We are located very close to each other, and we share a name to some degree, and so we often get folks coming in when they are trying to go visit the county and vice versa. So we are trying to simplify by having the same counter hours, and what that means is you can come to our counters at 919 Palm Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and get your questions answered at the counter on those days of the week. If you come outside of those times, you can still make an appointment to come back later in the afternoon. And this way it makes sure that people can have that access for more detailed questions. Those afternoon appointments, again, will still be available, but we want to make sure folks are aware. Monday, April 13th, we will be beginning these new counter hours at Community Development. And then finally, we just want to highlight agenda items that are coming up on our next meeting, so folks are aware. On our consent items, really want to highlight, we're looking toward awarding a contract to for our transit operators. So we do have a transit system here in San Luis Obispo, and we contract out the actual drivers and maintenance of our buses. And so we went through a competitive process recently to look at all of our options in terms of our service provider. And so we will be bringing that contract forward for potential award at our next meeting on April 21st. And then our business items, we want to highlight, we will be talking about everyone's favorite topic, our sewer lateral program. This time, recommending some changes to the program that we want to make sure everyone is aware of as well. We've been thinking and talking about this quite a lot, I think, and are ready to recommend some changes that would discontinue our formal offset program and instead impose a mandatory repair on sale for those laterals that were deemed to be in failed or poor condition. So that is a change to our current rules and regulations. We're open to more conversation. If we're not quite ready to kind of move forward on that date, that is okay, but we will be ready to have an ordinance introduced at that time if council and the community are ready to move forward. Of course, it takes 2 readings for an ordinance, so we would be back one more time before it goes into effect. On that same theme, we will also be talking about our water and sewer rates, but not the rates themselves. We're going to be discussing the structure, so the way that our rates are set up, how it is that we calculate them. Are we putting tiers in the right places and things like that? So that's our study session item. We will be coming back next year with our actual proposed rates for adoption for the next financial plan, essentially. So we still have a lot of time there too. So that's it from me for our city manager report.
Thank you so much. Any questions? All right. Well, moving forward now to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So these are, you have time to write, or sorry, you have time to share with us anything you have outside of the consent or outside of the public agenda. Those items, you'll come back and share your public comment at those times. City Clerk, do we have anyone for public comment?
Yes, we have 6, I believe. I'm going to call the first three. If you'll please line up and be ready to speak when the person in front of you is done. Sean Harris, Ben Lippert, Jackie Lowe.
Great, thank you. And I just want to remind people that if you are in support of what the speaker is saying, please give us this. If you are not in support, please give us this. But I know we just got done clapping for proclamations, so I wanted to make sure that wasn't confusing. Sean, up to you.
All right, thanks. Good evening. I'll make this quick. We've got 3 minutes. I was recently accosted, detained, and interrogated by federal agents employed by ICE on a dark street in San Luis, December 29th. And I can only surmise that the brazen nature in which they did so as a result of the decades-long bipartisan and now normalized assault on civil liberties through judicial appointments and legislative empowerment of the federal agencies doing so. As a registered Republican, Army veteran, and native Californian, a conservative argument against defense spending and spending on the aforementioned internal security agencies must be presented. This is not to argue against defense spending, but to do so without subjecting the American taxpayer whose birthright and patrimony is a strong social safety net, to lives of squalor, downward mobility, and hopelessness. 1, national debt is a greater threat to security than foreign adversaries. 2, our country could be broke and threatened if spending on defense is not reined in to close budget deficits. The Pentagon's continuous inability to pass a full audit is evidence of mismanagement. Defense contractors have acquired what former President Eisenhower said called unwarranted influence. Spending prioritizes corporate profits over actual strategic needs, such as continuing to fund vulnerable programs like Social Security, Medicare, and creating a national healthcare service. The U.S. should stop subsidizing the defense of wealthy allies who free ride and instead focus exclusively on homeland defense and, more importantly, again, social spending. As we march off to another pointless war, I would like to remind all Americans of Republican President Eisenhower's words, what is called his Cross of Iron speech in 1953. I quote, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and who are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. The cost of one modern heavy bomber is this: a modern brick school in more than 30 cities. It is 2 electric power plants, each serving a town of 60,000. It is 2 fine, fully equipped hospitals. It is some 50 miles of concrete pavement. We pay for a single fighter with 500,000 bushels of wheat. We pay for a single destroyer with new homes that could have housed more than 8,000 people. This is not a way of life at all. In any true sense, it is under the cloud of threatening war. It is humanity hanging from a cross of iron." I'd like to just close with this, that our current president, and I'm a Republican, is proposing a $1.5 trillion defense budget. Pete Hegseth and the Department of War is requesting another $200 billion. We run a continuous deficit and we sell treasury notes, and we're about to go broke. Foreign central banks are no longer buying our treasury notes. We run a Ponzi scheme, and if we don't fix this, we may have an economic collapse. I'd also like to encourage any young people not to join the military until our national government gets its priorities in order. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Mayor Stewart, council members, members of staff, and the public. My name is Ben Lippert. I'm a SLO resident and a father. I'm really excited to talk today, both because we're discussing climate action, which I care a lot about, but I actually also get to talk about something tangible, and that's state legislation concerning Diablo Canyon mitigation funds, extending the funds to the county and cities in SLO and a couple dozen other organizations. This funding was left out of SB 846 when operations at the plant were extended in 2022, and it has an outsized impact on our local school district, as I've mentioned before. When discussing this issue, I think it's important to understand the scope of the money being discussed when it comes to community funds related to DCP operations, particularly because as part of this advocacy, some of the parents have been told we're kind of asking for a handout. So I want to show everybody the amounts of money proportionally we're talking about here. So this is in general terms a pie chart showing the money that was allocated, distributed as part of SB 846, which extended operations. I'm not getting into each individual one of these. I'm happy to with anybody that's interested. I want everybody to just understand this is all ratepayer money. This is money from ratepayers that goes to PG&E either for employees or for management fees and other, again, detailed things. This is all ratepayer money. This doesn't include the 1.4 billion that they got as a loan. Now, when I talk about this issue, people assume that I don't think PG&E is deserving of this money. And I've been told I'm trying to bully PG&E, which is funny to me. I'm being unfair to the corporation. But really, I just want people to understand the policy decisions that were made in 2022 and how they didn't include our local community. This is what was left out for our local community, okay? This is the amount we're talking about. So in the future here, there's gonna be people, I'm sure, gonna talk about our handout, gonna talk about how much is gonna affect ratepayers. Again, this is where it fits. We could not fit this into this huge pie in 2022. Now we have legislation putting that in. This is consistent with your legislative, the letter you wrote a couple months ago, with your legislative plan that I wasn't here to talk about, but that I think is great as well. And most importantly, it means that the community that was left out when it came to SB 846 now is put back in. I would ask for more if I could, and I will. And the thing I want to point out, and I've been saying this to the county, is that PG&E has interests that often overlap with the citizens of this community, but they don't overlap completely. There are just times when the citizens, and this is one of those times, our interests don't necessarily overlap with PG&E. That doesn't mean you can't support it and the community can't support these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
After Jackie, Steve Barish, Leslie Halls, and Casey Matthews.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Lowe. I've been a resident in this city for 4 years, owning a home for 3 of those. This council has been aware of a month-long matter that directly impacted my home and the inequitable treatment we experienced as residents in this community. A month ago, my partner and I put our concerns in writing, and we explained that it felt like a council member had targeted us because she did not like our truck being parked in front of our home. We pointed out that a complaint came in on a Saturday, a work order was prepared by Monday morning, inaccurate measurements were used to justify removing the space, and the curb was painted red without notice, outreach, or any conversation with us first. We also explained that the public records showed the space actually complied with the laws and standards being cited to justify removing it. That did not produce a meaningful response. In fact, there was silence until today's media attention, and that matters. Because the public records show this did not begin as a neutral safety review. Councilmember Marks identified our truck, our license plate, and our address, and asked that the curb in front of our home be painted red and then extended. Staff internally treated it as a request from Councilmember Marks, and a work order was generated and approved the same morning. This is not equal treatment. It's important to state on the record that explanations keep shifting. First, it was the hydrant, then the crosswalk, then traffic entering the neighborhood, then site distance, and now the city says the original measurements were overly conservative and that there is enough room to restore an 8-foot parking space in front of my home. When government action is taken quickly against a specific resident and the justification changes over time, that raises serious concerns about abuse of position, special privilege, and an equitable response from staff. It also reflects a waste of public resources. Staff time was spent processing a council member-driven complaint, preparing a work order, painting out a lawful parking space, issuing enforcement, revisiting the site, and now reversing the whole thing. Those are public resources, and they were used on a problem the city is now effectively admitting should not have been handled this way in the first place. And this did not happen in a vacuum. Councilmember Mark drives by other visible parking violations before she reaches her own house, and those were not reported. But our truck in front of our home was singled out, and this is why it feels targeted and retaliatory. So what is warranted now is not just restoring the parking space, which I appreciate the email that was sent today, but what is warranted is an internal review of how this happened, why it moved as fast as it did, what role special access played, and how the city's narrative changed so many times along the way. This council should want to know how a matter that was framed one way in internal records, another way in later explanations, and yet another way after media attention resulted in action against the resident. Thank you.
Good evening, members, council, staff. My name's Leslie Halls. I live in the Laguna Lake area. I'm here tonight to talk about the constraints on our city budget and the finances. I have suggested at various forums a couple of ideas that might work well. But basically, looking back when Heidi Harmon was mayor, we saw a lot more people hired and our budget ballooned considerably. I think we have to look at maybe a way the federal government tried to do things about 40 years ago. They have a system called the government service, and 13579 all the way up to the very top department heads. They did an average of what that number was, and the only way to lower it and lower the costs was either to eliminate some of those top end or, of course, add more peons at the bottom. We have kind of a similar situation here. A lot of these positions were added while Mayor Harmon was mayor, and as a result, our budget ballooned, and we are head over heels in debt to CalPERS. I think we owe CalPERS close to $200 million right now in city employee retirements. That's an awful lot of money for a city of 50,000 people. And the only way we can do that is not just by cutting positions, but consolidating things. And here is an idea I had that makes this reasonable. Take a look at some of these positions and offer these people a golden handshake to be taken within, say, 2 years or at most 3 years, so they can look for getting another job. They're not going to be just fired on the spot. Many of these people have families with kids in school. It takes a while to relocate when you have a family and you're looking for a somewhat specialized job. Give them an opportunity to leave and pay them to do so. We can promote someone who's already here, or if the position can be combined, that would save money. By doing this, and hopefully moving some of the older people, I consider myself one, so I'm not, making bad things about them, but this might also open up opportunities for younger people to be able to work. And it's hard for young kids, especially Gen Z, to find any kind of a job. We got to start somewhere. And I think that this would be beneficial to the employee who would have a chance to look for another job, but still be here and then be given a handshake and some money to leave. And it would also be beneficial for young people looking for another job. And we could also consolidate some of these positions. At a meeting I went to about 2 months ago, we were talking about what happened to some folks, and they said, well, they'll just be assigned to another department. Well, that doesn't solve the problem. You don't just move guys around, You got to finally let go. And I know it's hard to fire people in the upper echelons because you see them a lot. They develop personal relationships with people. And I understand that. That's what happens in the private sector. But it isn't about personalities. It's about money. And if we're going to save the city from bankruptcy, we need to do something about this overwhelming CalPERS debt. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings, council members and mayor. My name is Jerry Gibson. I'm an educator, and I've lived in San Luis Obispo for 8 years, in the county for over 30 years. And my topic today is public safety and my observations and living here and seeing it firsthand. A few facts first. According to Capslow, there are 100 beds for the homeless on Prado Street. Public records in 2024 indicated that we had 512 registered homeless people. Today, we probably have somewhere between 512 and 600 homeless people. Obviously, the math doesn't work with only 100 beds available. So where are the 500 people in the homeless shelter living? Well, we see them. We see them in tents. We see them in encampments. We see them sometimes on sidewalks all over San Luis Obispo. You can't ignore it. It's there. The vast majority of these folks are not engaged with the ability to seek employment, find an apartment, find a room, because they fall into one of three categories, unfortunately, such as drug addiction, such as alcoholism, and mental illness, or a combination of all three. So we have a problem. And we have a problem if the laws are not enforced equally among all the residents and non-residents that come into San Luis Obispo, such as disturbing the peace, trespassing, vagrancy, loitering, public intoxication. Examples of this, unfortunately, can be seen at shopping centers in San Luis Obispo where families with children are witnessing various types of unsafe behaviors. On Prado Street, I don't live very far away, we see many people sleeping on the sidewalks, many people living in really horrible conditions on the sidewalks. And one of my neighbors told me he sees people on Prado Street, homeless people crossing the 101. That's just unimaginable. Unimaginable at night crossing the 101. It's horrible. This really comes down to an understanding the true nature of the problem. By the way, I am in favor, I'll put it right out, I'm in favor of helping the homeless help themselves. When people come to SLO, the process involves, just like for me and many of you, finding a job and finding a place to live and engaging in a positive way with our community, okay? But we have a population here of about half a thousand people that either do not have a job skill or simply not able to work because of an addiction or mental illness. Solution. What do? The city of San Luis Obispo needs to enforce, first and foremost, we need to enforce the laws for everyone. 2, I believe we need to help the 500 to 600 homeless people. It is inhumane to allow our brothers and sisters to live on the streets and not help them. What we could do, mandatory substance abuse rehab centers and therapeutic centers for the mentally ill.
Thank you.
Our final speaker is Steve Barish.
Good evening, members of the council. I've studied the city a long time. I've lived here 36 years. And I think sometimes you gotta lay it on the line. I think we have a communication problem between Public Works, the city biologist, and the maintenance staff. I was very concerned about a property the city owns and is supposed to maintain at 466 Dana Street. The grass is about 4 or 5 feet high. There are tree limbs that have fallen, they've been on the ground for approximately 3 to 4 months. My workmen had to move them out of the driveway so that we could get trucks to turn around without going into the easement. And I was told to solve this problem, I had to file an online complaint, which I did. I was told that the Public Works people have driven by it several times and acknowledged there's a problem. I gotta tell you, there's ways to solve problems that are far less complex than the city is using right now. There's a lot of finger pointing going on. The city really needs to learn to live by example. If there is a neighborhood wellness complaint, it's filed online. It's followed up with memos. It's followed up with at least 4 phone calls. Nothing has gotten done in 3.5 months. There may have to be an internal review of the cybernetic patterns within the city, how people communicate, lines of authority, and who's responsible for getting things actually done. So I hope you take my comments in a positive way. I hope you do a study on how things get cleaned up. This is not the way a city like San Luis should be managed and run on a daily basis. If there's any questions, you have my phone number, you have my email. There are at least 5 contacts with Public Works, the city's biologist, et cetera, et cetera. Still nothing has gotten done. So I've asked my workmen to move the branches, but we're not gonna cut the grass. We're not gonna try to do what the city has been required to do due to the title reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's the last speaker?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the comments. I know that the chief went out to chat with the individual about the homelessness concerns he has. Hopefully we can provide some more information, because I know we have quite a bit of policies and programs that he was sharing about that we could hopefully help with. Also, just wanted to share that regarding SB 931, we have actually sent out an advocacy letter, and myself and the vice mayor and city manager will be headed up to Sacramento, April 22nd through 25th through 24th to talk to our different elected leaders in Sacramento about many things that are happening happening that affect the city of San Luis Obispo, and Diablo is definitely one of them. Anything that, City Manager, you would like to add to any of the public commenters' comments?
Certainly, I mean, there's a few instances of specific issues that our staff has been working on, and so we will continue evaluating and responding as we need to. And so really with that, unless there's any other questions from you all that I might be able to answer that any other members of our team can, I think we're in a pretty good path on those specific cases that folks talked about.
Great, thank you very much. One of the challenges with public comment, it's things that are not on the agenda, so we don't go deeply into the items, but we will definitely be taking these back. So next we have consent agenda. These are items that are considered routine or non-controversial by staff. So at this point, if there's anything that our team would like pulled, as far as our council would like pulled, I personally would like to take 6C, the 2026 Legislative Action Platform, and have that discussed separately. Anything else? Seeing none. For the consent agenda, do we have any public comment for items not 6C?
No, we do not.
Okay. Is there a motion for all items not 6C? Councilmember Shorsman.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda minus 6C.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Francis.
I will second.
Great. Can we have roll call?
Councilmember Shorsman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, and the motion passes 4-0. And with that, thank you. Natalie Harnett has joined us here to answer or help guide and answer any questions. One of the things first I want to say is thank you so much to the subcommittee, Vice Mayor and City Council Member Boswell for sitting down and going through the detail. We've all done this at different times, and it's a lot of work, a lot of detail, but it helps us with our advocacy to Sacramento, to DC, to anywhere else about issues that we know that the city genuinely, on a general basis, cares about. One thing that brought me pause in the legislative platform is I'm always trying to figure out how do we build more housing, and there's some safety concerns that I've seen at a statewide level around the single stair apartment buildings. So I was curious to hear from you both where that was coming from and why we would in theory support that.
Yeah, this was basically driven by a pro-housing agenda. A lot of pro-housing organizations and legislators have been advancing the idea of single staircase reform. And so we saw that as consistent with our pro-housing agenda. That's the basic logic for it.
Did you have our fire department or anyone come in and share some of the concerns with the single stair reform during your meeting or any other conversations about that?
No, we did not.
Because I have seen quite a bit from the state level where there's some concern about people getting out of their homes if you have fire coming up the only staircase there is and people trying to get out of the only staircase. So just wanted to hear from either our chief or our interim chief or from Natalie if you've been looking into that research as well.
Maybe, Madam Mayor, while our interim fire chief comes up to provide more information, we did have a chance to look at this in a little bit more detail and published a staff agenda correspondence earlier today with recommended addition to the language. Our legislative platform last year included a provision that discussed a study that was referenced in AB 835 related to single staircase, single exit, single stairway apartment buildings as part of the building code updates. That study was completed, and so that's what we've added into the referred to additional language. The study was completed by the state fire marshal, and it did have some conclusions in it that raised some concerns about the approach or the concept, I suppose, after doing some research into this issue. So with that, we provided some proposed language that would essentially say, if there's a way for the provisions to be lined up that would both address the desire to facilitate additional housing through a single staircase building code revision, while also addressing concerns in that state fire marshal report, that would be kind of threading that needle well, addressing really both of those potential issues and concerns. And so that's what we've put together and submitted as part of the agenda correspondence, but certainly here to help with the dialogue and conversation. It's an issue that is pretty contested, I think, in a lot of parts of the country, as well as in our state. You've seen jurisdictions like Culver City move forward with adopting their own regulations that are different from the statewide regulations in an effort to try to increase housing, but with a lot of concern, I think, and heartburn from folks in our fire suppression work in communities around the state. And so there's a lot of, I think, still dialogue happening. There are jurisdictions, so beyond Culver City, Seattle allows for them, and clearly more historic parts of our country where some of their staircase improvements are very different from what we're talking about here. But here the discussion is really around new development and that balance of how do we both facilitate housing and address our fire safety concerns. So certainly our fire chief can speak more eloquently about the specific concerns, as well as perhaps a little bit more about that state fire marshal report.
Hi, Randy Harrison, Interim Fire Chief. Yes, the State Fire Marshal's Office just released a report the first week of March, and that is fairly comprehensive. It looks at a lot of different dynamics in play, and does recommend going up to 4 stories for that single staircase, which is a growth. Basically, right now it's adopted up to 3 stories. But they do pretty much unanimously across all organizations, from fire chiefs, building officials, really hesitate to go above 4 stories, because it does change firefighting operations. Operations above 4 stories are a lot more dynamic. We are trying to get additional equipment up, which then when you're trying to get evacuees down the same staircase, it really does present a conflict and slows. That study also carried out some time trials. So it went from approximately 2-minute evacuation to over 6, just trying to get the same people down the same stairwell. And then as you go further up, elderly people that perhaps wouldn't normally take the staircase, they'd be using an elevator. When the elevators, either during an earthquake or a fire, are not available, then they actually find that over 3 to 4 stories, they do have to take breaks. And so that starts to really congest stairwells. So it's a dynamic issue. We do support the State Fire Marshal study with it. If you haven't had a chance to review that, I do feel it's a good study. And I don't know if that was out at the time that the group really did its analysis.
Great, thank you so much. Councilmember Schwarzman?
Yeah, I'm going to change topics a little bit. So if there's further questions on this particular one, I'd let them go first, just for continuity.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you sharing a little bit more. I knew I had heard some rumblings at the state level, and just wanted to make sure that we were staying consistent with safety as well as pro-housing. So thank you very much. Thank you. If you want to add to that, yes, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of wrap up that discussion and make sure you're comfortable with us landing with the recommendations of that State Fire Marshal report.
Yeah, with the updated language, that works for me.
Great.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay, so my question is about public safety too, but in a little different area. I think it's on page 66 of the packet. It's public safety item number 9, and the item states policies and legislation. I think it's support policies and legislation that allow for increased enforcement ability for on and off-street parking, with an emphasis on allowing automated parking control devices. For example, parking space sensors, parking structure cameras, automated citations, et cetera. And just reading that reminded me, I know we've had conversations here about our inability to do things like speed enforcement with cameras too. And I know it's not necessarily related to parking, but I wondered if that was something that we wanted to kind of add to an item somewhere to see if that is something that we would want to advocate for. Because I know I've seen it in other countries and other jurisdictions as well, maybe not the state level here, because I think there are reasons that we can't do it in the state of California, but just wanted to throw that out there and ask if that was something that was considered or you guys talked about in the ad hoc committee at all.
And I'm just going to add with that, because that was actually, my question was around the same issue, but a little bit different in the realm of, do we want to add anything to whether it's the brand name of Flock or other cameras that are taking data that we don't necessarily want it to go in the way that it's being utilized at a higher level? Do we want to add in any sort of like additional notes of if there's ways to not have that data go somewhere inappropriate? That would be great. Vice Mayor.
So I guess the question goes to the original question, maybe not the Flock part, but the original question maybe goes to the police chief of if that's something that's worth even putting in a statement somewhere in terms of using cameras for speeding or other infractions.
For sure. Rick Scott, Police Chief. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for the question. What I will say is right now it's only a pilot program. I think there's 5 cities in the state that have been granted a pilot for speed enforcement cameras, and I think the pilot was something like 5 years long. I'm surely messing these numbers up. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that question specifically. But yes, so there is a pilot right now for a couple of years, and then after the pilot process and it's studied, the state will decide if they can open that up to other cities across our state. So I certainly think if you're asking if language could be added to explore that as those options become available from the state, I certainly think that would be in line with our traffic safety goals.
Thank you. I don't know if you had a question to add on there related to the other. Okay, I don't know if the mayor has another question while he's standing here, or?
I think you've shared with us before as far as Flock and how the data, we don't have a whole lot of control after the data leaves our parsing. I don't know, there was a better word for that. And I understand that it's somewhat confidential, but yet somewhat can also be figured out by some of the larger data companies. So can you share with us a little bit about the Flock contact information and how safe that is for our community?
Yes, what I can say right now, we've had the opportunity to study the issue. This has been a issue with that particular company across the country. We've had an opportunity to examine our settings specifically and have absolute confidence that our data is not being shared. Obviously, with SB 54 and some of the other pieces of legislation, we're not allowed to share certain types of data outside the state of California, and certainly not with regard to any type of immigration. We're very limited on any federal partners we would consider even sharing with, and certainly not anything focused on immigration. So right now, we're working very closely. We only have 2 Flock cameras that are still active in our city. We're working very closely with their with their company to ensure that our settings remain safe for our data and that it's not being transported outside of our custody.
Great, thank you so much. Vice Mayor Francis?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very much hoping to have a conversation about data privacy and think maybe there's some language that we can work together to put in there if we can get consensus on that front. I don't mean to speak for Councilmember Boswell, but I know that he has mentioned having an interest in trying to advocate specifically for being able to monitor speeds in school zones and work on some legislation on that front. So I'll let him speak to that, but would very much like to, and it's kind of in partnership with this conversation too, but like to have a discussion. You know, speed is a particular problem in our city, and we had another tragic death on Broad Street, and we really need to do everything we can to get that under control. So I'll let Councilmember Boswell speak to his advocacy here.
And after Councilmember Boswell, I'll probably ask the chief to come back up and share how enforcement is working currently and how any sort of help that he would like from our legislative advocacy. Councilmember Boswell.
Yeah, so we did include an automated speed enforcement item. It's on page 69, which is actually page 23 of the platform itself, and it's number 21. And I believe we had it in our previous platform, and the thing we did add was clarification on, especially in school zones. And really what we're kind of trying to advocate for is the legislature to move quicker on expanding the current pilot program to either allow additional cities in or to simply open it up to all cities potentially. So.
Thank you for that clarification, because that was my next question. Chief?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to speak further on our traffic safety goals, and we would certainly appreciate any advocacy, especially on speed-related enforcement. With our city in particular, our enforcement efforts are certainly governed by our staffing. We do have dedicated traffic units. We would certainly like to see more in the future, but also all of our officers are traffic officers, so when they're not on calls, they also do traffic enforcement. I think one of the most effective areas, aside from automated technologies, is continuing to advocate for more grants. We use a lot of traffic safety grants because if you don't have the staffing, the grant funds allow us to add that temporary staffing, typically under overtime, but it's good because we can focus on a particular problem, whether it's distracted driving or speed or DUI enforcement. So the grants coming from the state are very, very welcome for our community.
So when we have, just for example, on your way to the high school, on your way to Sinsheimer, there's often extra officers on Johnson at different times. Is that normal procedure then, or is that from kind of these grant funds, extra funding?
It's both. And so obviously during the times for drop off and pick up, we want to be highly visible around most of our schools when we can. Not only is it the speeding motorists, but it's also folks that are on skateboards and bicycles to ensure that they're commuting safely as well. But yes, so we do try to get around to the district, or different areas when we can around the schools. But when we are on those grants, they are focused specifically on particular driving behaviors that are twice as impactful when you couple that with young riders or around a school where inattention can be tragic.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I feel comfortable to move forward personally. Any other questions before we move to public comment? Any public comment? Oh, just kidding, sorry, Vice Mayor?
Just wanted to make sure you didn't want to add language around data privacy or discuss that at this point.
We could.
After public comment.
Yeah, I figured we'd do that for public comment. Thank
Thanks.
you. Any public comment?
There's none.
Okay, great. Now's the time. Yeah, I felt like as we get to, I think it was page 66, sorry. Yeah, so as far as page 66, number 9 on the Ledge Action Platform, page 20, do we want to add something here, or do you want to add an additional 9A, whatever, number 10, to make this a full 14, Councilmember Shoresman?
So I guess my answer to that question depends on, are you talking about the data privacy issue or the speed enforcement with cameras? Because I actually feel like once, related to speed enforcement with cameras, once Councilmember Boswell and the Vice Mayor pointed out the item number 21 on page 69, that covers what I just had missed. It's a long document and they all start to run together after a while, and I hadn't remembered that item. So I feel like in looking at that and reading through it, it covers the advocacy that I was looking for.
Okay, so I'm looking for the cameras and the data staying within our community. It seems as though right now it is, which is wonderful, but I do think that since this is a Ledge platform, continuing to have advocacy around data privacy is important. So I would love to see that added on. Vice Mayor?
So perhaps some language around support policies that ensure that municipalities retain full autonomy over their data collection.
Perfect.
Something along those lines.
That'd be number 14. Yep, sounds good to me.
Any concerns with that?
Any concerns? That? Okay, staff seems to be okay.
Where would that go?
Number
Sorry.
14. Yeah, we're in public safety, right?
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, we're in public works. I apologize. So.
Nope, sorry, keep going. 32.
I agree with that language. I'm not going to comment on
Yeah.
where it's
Can we just say
supposed to
go under
go,
public
but yeah,
safety and
y'all
go from there?
can figure out where would be best, either public safety. It seems like probably public safety rather than transportation, which is where I was
Yeah,
looking.
that's fine with me. Okay. Natalie, do you have any specific location that would be best in within the platform?
We can do it.
You want to get me here? You can press the button.
I would recommend under public safety, so that would be number 32.
Perfect. That sounds good to me. All right. So with
Mayor,
that.
do you mind if
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just love to check in with Chief Scott one more time to make sure that that language is specific and or broad enough to get at what you would hope from any legislation that emerged.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. I think if I heard you correctly, advocating for policies on data protections and security, essentially. I might expand that a little bit to policies and something along the lines of legislation or laws specifically, because I do think this legislative session, we're going to get some additional laws that govern LPR usage as well as the exchange of that information.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shoresman.
Just going to throw this out for as an idea, but I wonder, are we just concerned about data privacy in the public safety setting, or should this go somewhere more in a different section that's a little more general?
I'm okay with it being general. The only reason I was thinking public safety is because we've talked about speed enforcement. We've also talked about license plate review, the software. We've received a lot of emails through the years on that. And so I just thought between the license plate recognition and the speed, it seemed like it was falling under there. But it doesn't have to stay under just public safety for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Private data is important in all different realms.
Yeah, I guess the only other section that maybe it might go in is under finance and governance. So I'm happy with it in public safety if that's where it makes the most sense. I just wondered if we were just talking about public safety data, and it seems like we're being a little more general, but either way is fine with me.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, Natalie, I'll ask you if it becomes a private data issue that we are, and I'll say to city attorney as well, a private data issue that goes out of public safety, and we have it within public safety, but it seems to make sense in our overall legislative concerns and our overall major city goals and priorities. Would we be then bringing that topic back to the council for a letter, or would it be better to be under governance administration so that we don't have to come all the way back for a letter, because that's the whole point of the platform?
I think it makes the most sense to have it in public safety, even if it's not a public safety issue, because it's the safety of people's privacy and data. So we could use it broadly across anything, doesn't need to be on specifically public safety matters.
Great, thank you. I just want to make sure. All right, I see a nodding of concern, or head nodding in recognition. And with that, then Councilmember Shoresman.
Yeah, there were a couple other issues in the agenda correspondence besides the staircase language that I wanted to bring up. Staff has recommended, there's an item number 2 that was under DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, plank number 14, that just had some, like a phrase added to advocate for Medicare and other health insurance program reform, to try to make that plank a little bit more general and not just apply to Medicare. And so I'd like to see if you all are agreeable to adding that plank. And then the other one that I was interested in was the proposed language around e-bikes. I know there's a lot of activity happening at the state level, and a lot of it is really good and well-meaning, and there are going to be instances where I'm concerned that regulation of e-bikes might come at cross purposes with our climate action goals. And so I want us to really look at those measures closely when they come. And I think that the language that staff has recommended is, it contains some good trigger points to make sure that we look at those issues closely when they come to a potential letter writing opportunity.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. As far as I'm concerned, I agree with both of those comments. I'd be comfortable with both being added, the expansion of the Medicare, and then increasing the careful wording for the e-bikes as well. Vice Mayor and Councilmember Boswell? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm happy to support all of those additions as presented by staff.
Thank you. Councilmember Boswell?
Yes, I'd support as well.
Great. Do we have a motion? Vice Mayor?
I move to approve the 2026 legislative agenda.
Thank you. I'll be happy to second it. Can we have roll call? Oh. Councilmember Shorsman, go ahead.
I just want to make sure the motion and a second includes all the recommended language that we've talked about. Okay.
Good point, and thank you. Yes, I agree.
Vice Mayor Francis?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell?
Yes.
Councilmember Shorsman?
Yes.
And the motion passes 4-0. Thank you so much. All right, consent agenda. We are done with that. So next we have the general plan report. So we'll go ahead and move into the general plan report, and then after that we'll go into a break. So with that, I'm not sure who's coming up.
I'll go ahead and kick it off. Timmy Toy, Director of Community Development. This is an annual report that is submitted to the state every year, but it's a really great opportunity for city staff to share with the council and the community all of the work that's been going on all of the policies and programs in the general plan. I encourage everyone to check this document out. It's really interesting and kind of exciting to see all the work that goes on in the year to further the goals in our general plan. It also includes information about meeting our housing goals, which I know is really important and interesting to a lot of people. David and Ethan will present very high-level information from this report. And this is Ethan's first time at City Council. So Ethan is on our housing team and has been a wonderful asset and planner on that team and did so much work to pull all this information together. So I just want to thank all of the city staff, the City Council for your support as we continue to further the goals in the general plan, and the planning staff for pulling all of this information together. So with that, I'll hand it over to David and Ethan.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Stewart and council members. Again, my name is Ethan Estrada, and I am an assistant planner from the Community Development Department. Together with my colleague, David Amini, senior planner for the Housing Division, we will be presenting the 2025 General Plan Annual Report. Staff's recommendation tonight is for your council to receive and file the 2025 General Plan Annual Report. The City of San Luis Obispo's general plan consists of 8 elements covering a range of topics such as land use, housing, conservation, and open space, and more. Overall, the general plan is a comprehensive statement of the city's goals, and it guides the use and protection of various resources to achieve them. California Government Code Section 65400 and the city's land use element require an annual report be made on the status of the general plan. This report provides an opportunity for the city to review the results of its efforts in implementing the general plan and its programs. With that, let's go over some highlights from the report. Looking at planning and building activity in 2025, a total of 222 planning applications were received. This includes use permits, development reviews, subdivisions, and more. A total of 525 building permits were issued to the public, which included permits for a net total of 192 residential units, accounting for demolitions that occurred. The 192 units consisted of 83 single-family units, 104 ADUs, and 11 multifamily units.
All right.
Now moving on to our residential growth. So the general plan provides that the city's housing supply shall grow no faster than 1% per year on average, based on the estimated population growth that's outlined in Table 3 of our land use element. We exempt affordable housing units, new units within the downtown core, and ADUs from the growth management regulations. So in 2025, when we excluded all those exempt units, we added 174 units to our city's housing stock. That makes it for a total of 23,292 units, which are subject to the growth management policy. And so when we account for this addition, cities maintain an average annual growth rate of exactly 1%. The general plan also requires the city to evaluate increases in non-residential floor area over a period of 5 years. Should the net growth rate exceed 5%, the council shall consider implementing limits on new net non-residential floor area. So for 2025, we added just over 176,000 square feet of net new non-residential floor area. This placed the annual growth rate for 2025 at 1.47% and the 5-year net growth rate at 3.15%. And this increase is primarily due to the Marriott Spring Hill Suites Residence Inn hotel project in the St. Louis Ranch area. And that consisted of over 120,000 square feet of floor area. So moving on to our RENA progress, our 6-cycle housing element period began in January 2019, and our housing element was adopted by council in November 2020 and certified by HCD in September 2021. And so our allocation that was given by the state provided 3,354 housing units to plan for during this period. And so in 2025, the city permitted 53 new units that count towards the city's quantified objective, which includes the income level categories that are remaining. The only categories that we have remaining are our affordable categories: extremely low, very low, low, moderate. We've already met our above moderate allocation. So as of 2025, we have 1,229 units left. So the city is positioned to add more below market rate units to count towards that RENA allocation in our coming years. There's a total of 357 units in the development process. The majority of these projects are either under construction now or they're going to begin construction soon. Moving on to homelessness statistics, in 2025, the city responded to 104 encampment fires, 941 medical incidents involving people experiencing homelessness. Additionally, 47 tons of trash was removed, and city staff conducted outreach, and cleaned up 247 illegal encampments. We continue to support our partnerships with organizations like CAPSLO, awarding over $400,000 to the organizations for various programs such as operations of the 40 Prado Homeless Services Center, also the 40 Prado Safe Parking Program, a hotel and motel voucher program, the warming and cooling centers, as well as our new community safe parking pilot program. There was additional financial support from the city to nonprofit organizations through our Human Services Grant. The city received funding requests summing up just over $419,000. That's $269,000 more than what was available. And our city's community action team and mobile crisis unit housed within our police and fire departments continue to respond to homelessness-related issues and engage with individuals who are in need of services, as well as facilitating reunions with family members when possible. City staff also continued to oversee the development of numerous area and specific plans, starting off with our Margarita area specific plan. The remaining projects include the Prado Business Park at 301 Prado, and then a mixed-use project at 365 Prado, which is set to provide 222 residential units, and that's in the entitlement and review process. Moving on to our Orchid area specific plan, the Enclave at Rigetti, Jones mixed-use projects, and then the 4 live-work townhomes in the Pratt property are under construction. And then Bullock Ranch is awaiting, where the city's awaiting a final building permit submittal from the Bullock Ranch portion. Moving on to our airport area, so we have a mix of different projects that are at different stages of development review. We've got several large mixed-use projects under review, as well as the Slow Airport Hotel. In 2025, the City Council approved amendments to the airport area specific plan to specifically allow mixed-use development in the CS and M zones with a minor conditional use permit where appropriate. Moving on to our Avila Ranch area, single-family residences in phases 1 through 3 still under construction, and then the remaining units of phases 3 through 5 are awaiting building permit submittal for review. Development in our Froome Ranch area, it was on hold throughout 2025. However, we recently received an application to initiate a specific plan amendment, and City Council consideration of this application is expected to take place sometime this year. Moving on to the San Luis Ranch specific plan area, the majority of our developments were completed in 2025, including the hotel project that I mentioned, also Slow Ranch Farms. And then in 2024, council authorized the submittal of general and specific plan amendments for what we call Lot 7, which contained 11 acres of initially commercially zoned land, allowing the development of residential units, 276 on that property. We haven't received applications for that portion yet.
Looking at our water supply, availability from the city's 4 water sources equaled 10,246 acre feet, which meets the projected primary water supply need of 7,496 acre feet. Additional information is available in the city's annual water supply and demand assessment. Looking at transportation and circulation, in accordance with the circulation element of the general plan, 2025 saw a lot of activity in all aspects of transportation and circulation. Some highlights include the city's first Vision Zero action plan, which establishes priorities in areas of engineering, enforcement, and education to improve traffic safety citywide. The plan was released in draft form for public review in 2025 and is expected to be finalized early this year. Additionally, the 2024 paving project was completed in 2025, featuring numerous improvements made along Grand Avenue, Johnson Avenue, and numerous neighborhood streets. Looking at slow transit, some 2025 highlights include the addition of 6 new electric buses to the city's fleet, which placed the city ahead of the state's zero emission mandates. Staff also reported nearly 660,000 passenger trips in 2025, which is a 17% increase from the previous fiscal year. The city also saw the adoption of the short-range transit plan update in 2025. This plan recommends a host of service fare and program changes for the next 5 years to meet the community's transportation needs. Looking at safety services, the fire department responded to 7,344 incidents in 2025. Outside of these standard responses, the urban search and rescue team continued its operations, responding to 13 technical rescues and medical emergencies in open space areas. Additionally, the mobile crisis unit also continued their operations, responding to 143 calls for service and engaging in 2,234 field contacts. In March 2025, the state released updated fire hazard severity zone maps, greatly increasing the number of parcels in the city subject to a fire hazard severity zone. Following the maps, the 2025 Wildland Urban Interface Code was also released for adoption and implementation by cities to begin in 2026. A study session was held to discuss these updates, and the MAPS, WUI code, and new fire code were adopted. The police department completed its second year of its 5-year strategic plan, which included a department-wide staffing study, implementation of data-driven policing tools, and more. The police department's community action team continued operating in 2025 as well, engaging with 798 individuals and issuing 164 treatment referrals to mental health and substance abuse services. Looking at conservation and open space, the general plan provides for open space protection that applies to sensitive lands within the city's urban reserve, as well as land in the San Luis Obispo Greenbelt area to be protected for its biological, agricultural, aesthetic, and watershed protection value. City staff continue to implement these programs through a variety of efforts, including the opening of the Rigetti Hill open space and invasive species control along the Froome, Profumo, and San Luis Obispo creeks. Looking at Parks and Recreation, in alignment with the Parks and Recreation element of the general plan, staff continue to provide programs and services in 2025 with a focus on youth, senior, and family programming. This included continuation of the recreational youth and adult sports program. Park and Recreation activities also included open space maintenance, such as the opening of the new Laguna Lake Dog Park featuring 3 acres of fenced play areas, providing separate spaces for large and small dogs, along with agility structures for their enjoyment. Additionally, in 2025, the multi-park system for the Orchid Area Specific Plan was approved for construction, including funding authorization for the first 3 of 5 phases. So in conclusion, this report has shown that the city continues to make substantial progress in implementing programs outlined in the general plan. Additionally, the data in various reports provided by staff indicate that the city has been successful in continuing to promote and achieve development and economic growth, community safety and well-being, climate adaptation, and more. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I agree with Director Tway. Kicked us off is that this presentation is a great way to kind of take a look at what's been happening in our community. So thank you for this really great presentation. Any questions from my colleagues? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones here. Apologies for not asking this in advance, but I was thinking about it as you were talking here. I'm so excited to see that 17% increase in transit ridership. That's awesome. And I can't help but think back, I remember pre-COVID, is this right, that had the second highest ridership in the state per capita? And so there's kind of been this quest to get back to that previous number. And I was wondering where we compare, if anybody has that data, how close we are to getting back. And if we don't have it tonight, no worries, since I'm sort of springing this on you. But maybe we can bring back that number at a future meeting. Oh, there we go.
Hold on.
Were your ears burning in the other room? Thank you for coming.
Test.
There you go.
Alex Fuchs, Mobility Services Business Manager. I oversee Slow Transit on behalf of the city. You were asking about ridership per capita. I don't have that off the top.
No, just how we compare to maybe pre-COVID numbers. Are we almost?
So if we continue on this ridership growth trend, we should be back to pre-COVID normals. Around 980,000 is the number in my head from fiscal year 2018, 2019 in about 2 years. But we could see that accelerated as we implement some of the Sharing Transit Plan recommendations. But we will also be looking at performance metrics, not just whole numbers, but riders per operating cost per hour and mile, which help indicate how well we are doing performance-wise, not just whole numbers.
I think that's worthy of recognition. You've done an incredible job getting us back, and we've seen these numbers every year going up and up. So really appreciate all your hard work on that front. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for everything you've done, and thank you to all of our riders.
Absolutely. And then another big, broad question for you all around housing. Have to ask. I know we ask every single year, but we have these kind of elusive low and very low income units that we're chipping away at, and I actually feel incredibly optimistic looking at the list of projects that are about to come through here in the next year. But are there other levers that we can or should be pulling to get at specifically, we're building that market rate housing. How do we get those low and very low income units?
I think if you were to ask some of our affordable housing partners, they'd probably say funding. So continuing to look for and investigate new funding sources that might come from the state or, other sources. There's a lot of funding too that ties in with different infrastructure and transportation improvements, like our Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant. Really the state we haven't seen anything new come up in a couple of years. So I think that's really the main picture. Also, what we're seeing too is a lot of, density bonus type projects that are going in infill areas of the city. And I think that's a really not as well-known tool, but where we continue to provide those low income, very low and moderate units as part of larger projects. Those are really important because they're integrated into a larger development into the city. So you wouldn't even know that that's there. But I think that's another continuing to incentivize those projects. And I think through our plan review process, we've really incentivized a lot faster entitlements for those specific types of projects.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that question. I know it's a big unwieldy problem, and you all have worked really hard to chip away at those numbers. So appreciate all your work on that front.
Absolutely. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yes, first of all, I just want to thank you all for answering some of my questions in agenda correspondence. I appreciate that. And I was sort of hoping with my question about the below market rate units that we have sort of in the pipeline, that maybe more of them weren't counted in our number that we still needed to get to, but it seems like there are some that have not been counted yet. So hopefully we'll keep chipping away at that. As you said, Vice Mayor, that 500 number is the one that's most daunting, the extremely low and the very low. So off topic from housing just for a second, in housing in a different way, really. I saw reference to, with relation to the high fire severity zone maps, the detailed home assessment program. And I was wondering, I know the fire chief is still here in the back of the room, if I thought that was a program that was still in the making and not quite here yet. And I just want to clarify if I read that correctly, or if that's something that's happening already. And if it is happening, how do people access that? He's coming to save you.
Hi, Randy Harris, Interim Fire Chief. Yes, it's still in the making. We do expect it to, our interns just came on board 2 weeks ago. They started doing some training with that, and we do anticipate in the next month that we'll have our website up and people can log on to the website and put their address in, and we'll have that crew go out and do a voluntary assessment of their property.
Excellent. So I know you hate to probably put a date on it, but like estimated, are we talking ready in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months?
No, probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're quick
Excellent.
learners.
Excellent. That's great to hear. I've had people ask me about it, so that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I wanted to give the police chief maybe an opportunity to give a little bit more detail about the SNAP and noise complaint numbers that I know we've had some questions about from the community. So I wanted to see if you could kind of explain the number of noise complaints, DACs, which we know are disturbance advisement cards and such.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember, for the question. One thing I'll add, we did find a mistake in the plan. We had, I think, our party registrations listed at 4,000. It was actually 400, and I think 53. So I want to make that note for the correction. We've had that changed online, but also the staff report in front of you is just going to contain that current error. What I will say, I'm happy to answer any questions on our SNAP activity. As you know, that's our student essentially our student officer program that focuses exclusively on noise and other types of livability issues in the community. But if you had any questions on the data specifically, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Maybe you can clarify, like, what is a noise complaint and how does it get logged in the 570 noise complaints?
Yeah, so anything that's a disturbance to any of our community members will technically come in as a noise complaint. Often we'll send an officer out or a SNAP officer to go out and evaluate the complaint. If the noise is emanating beyond 50 feet of the property line, that's technically subject to a violation, and or a DAC, which is a disturbance advisory card. After a property location has received a DAC, the next contact that is a valid noise violation generally will be a citation at that point. So a DAC is an official warning, putting them on record. If you have another violation, that will be considered an infraction with the citation.
So the citations and the complaints are generally, they're logged if when an officer or a SNAP officer goes out to the location and hears the noise themselves, that's when a citation or a DAC or a complaint is logged. As opposed to, like, I'm sure there are some times where an officer goes out and maybe a neighbor has heard something, it's been loud, and then by the time you get there, the disturbance has subsided enough to where you can't see that or tell that something's been happening.
That's correct. Generally, about a third to about a half of our complaints result in some type of enforcement action, either a DAC, a verbal warning, or a citation. That's generally what happens with most of our noise complaints. For the rest of those, they're unable to determine a violation, or we couldn't find the originating source of the complaint. You know, sometimes they'll hear something down the street, we get there and it's gone, or it was a passing vehicle or something like that. So that does happen from quite often.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
One last question, sort of piggybacking on the Vice Mayor's question about how do we get more of those BMR below market rate units, especially in those low areas? Yes, funding our nonprofit housing providers would appreciate as many opportunities to get funding as we can. But I guess, are there other levers that we could pull for other developments where we can get, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the ideas are. So I guess that's why I'm asking, are there other ways through the development process that we could encourage builders to include more of those units in their developments?
So I kind of mentioned a little bit about density bonus projects. So we do see a lot of projects where, we do have an inclusionary housing policy and requirement. However, the majority of projects that come before us typically circumvent that through using the state density bonus law to provide additional affordable units. I think also too, part of the process when it comes to some of our larger tracks as they start to develop in our expansion areas is that's really the opportunity where we have the ability to negotiate providing units maybe in that are slightly in excess of what the inclusionary requirement would be or the density bonus requirements would be. That's really the key opportunity that we have to provide these inclusionary units in part of our larger scale tract developments. And then in our infill projects too, there is still that opportunity.
I know we also have the flexible density program in the downtown core, and the last time I checked, that hasn't really yielded as many units as we had hoped. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of different challenges when it comes to our downtown, but the small lot sizes and just the types of construction that are necessary may make some of those larger mixed-use projects a little bit less feasible than infill projects in vacant lots or other underutilized areas of the city. So we haven't seen a lot of interest or traction in that, at least at this time.
Okay. It's still something that's turning around in my mind. How can we get infill to be a little bit more dense and maybe to include more BMR units? Maybe it's a pie in the sky dream, but just something I'm still thinking about. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I wish there was a magic crystal ball that would really help us figure out something else. With that, I don't see any other questions. So do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, just sometimes like the really large things that we're working on and then there's no public comment surprises me. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for this report. Thank you for the agenda correspondence because it covered some of my additional questions. And the one thing that kind of sticks in my mind early on, can you put up the PowerPoint? I think it was like the second slide. It had when each element had been updated. Thank you. So as we're obviously doing a quick look back to 2025, I also look at all of these and kind of foresee 2027's conversations around the things that we need to update. I find it wild. We have a lot of conversations about noise, and we haven't updated this since 1996. So I see on my crystal ball, Chief Scott might be in these conversations in the near future. I think also as we talk in the end of May about our study session around code violations and conversations, this is the kind of thing that ties back together with it is what's our plan, what does it say, and what kind of changes do we need to make? So yeah, it keeps me in that conversation constantly. So thank you so much. With that, I will pass it on. This is a receive and file item. Councilmember Boswell.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to thank staff for the very thorough report. It's great reading. And like you said, it's a great chance to catch up on, oh yeah, look at all the cool stuff we've done. One thing you went over very quickly, which I always think we should acknowledge, I get a lot of questions on it, is how well we continue to do on our water supply system. The investments and the long-term planning we've done on water supply, when you look at the report, the section in here, you continue to see not only are we performing quite well, but our reserves and our safe yield continue to really be better than almost we could hope for. We're in such a good position relative to water in a state that is immensely challenged with water. So I want to thank particularly the utility staff for their continued hard work on ensuring we have a safe and reliable water system. Thanks.
Thank you. Lots of years of investment and very challenging meetings. With that, Councilmember Shorsman.
Yeah, thank you again for the report. And just one thing that I wanted to make sure to just talk about just for a second. We talked about it this morning in agenda review. And again, it was kind of brushed over at the beginning. It's an important element, but we haven't hit our, well, we have only hit our 1% growth limit or goal, however you want to look at it, once in the past many years, last year and 2024, and it seemed like a big deal that we reached that. And now we're seeing sort of a decrease again in the number of units being built. And we had a conversation this morning about how that originated as part of a requirement in our general plan that we have these limits, and reflected a different policy stance more generally across the state than we have now, that we really needed to limit growth. And as long as we can provide for the growth with utilities, water, services, that we shouldn't grow beyond that. And I think we're at a different place now where we can handle a little bit above 1% here and there, and it's okay. And we're not going to strive to make that a limit. At least that's not my perspective. And so just wanted to kind of point that out. And I don't believe it's been sort of the stance of the policy that would be a limit either, at least not this council. So thanks for the great report and appreciate it.
Thank you. So with that note, we'll receive and file, and then we will take a 10-minute break. See you all back just before 7:30. Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for the little break. We are back for our final-ish item. It is the study session for the Community Climate Action Plan Progress Report and 2027, sorry about that, Plan Update Study Session. And with us, we have Chris Reed and Lucia Pullman ready to go. So sorry, Deputy City Manager Greg Herman.
So close, I promise. I'll be quick. Just want to kick it off really briefly for the council, and a big thank you to Chris, Lucia, and Bob, and the rest of the staff that we have from throughout the city to support this item. This is a citywide effort, and it's an important moment this evening. We're happy to be here to talk about our progress, both on where we've been and also where we're headed with respect to our climate action plan. Through council's direction previously, it's clear that we've established ourselves as a leader, and that leadership really matters. Since 2020, we've secured approximately $56 million in outside funding that has gone to local climate projects within our community. That leadership has also opened up doors to regional and statewide networks, giving us access to cutting-edge research and best practices to help us work smarter and more effectively. All of that's important because our climate action plan is not just a standalone document, and climate action is not a standalone goal. It is a lens for us to look at all of the work that we do at the city, and there is a lot more work to do. For more on what that might look like in the future and how we've done so far, I'm happy to turn it over to Chris and Lucia for the presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Herman, and good evening, Council and Madam Mayor. I'm Chris Reed, Sustainability Manager, and tonight I'm joined by Lucia Baseman, our Sustainability and Natural Resources Analyst, as well as staff from essentially all of the departments in our city that will be available to answer questions as they come up. Tonight we'll be covering two closely related topics: our 2026 Climate Action Progress Report and our 2027 Climate Action Plan Update. And the progress report really serves as the context for in the background for the sort of scoping conversation we're going to have around the 27 CAP update. To that end, staff's recommendation is to 1, receive and file the 2026 Climate Action Plan Progress Report, 2, provide strategic direction on the 2027 Climate Action Plan Update, and 3, direct staff to join the Local Government Climate Alliance to advocate for pre-approved positions via the city's adopted legislative action platform. Later in this presentation, we will also present the council with a list of strategic questions, and that will occur later in this presentation. So we'll start with some background information. The city's climate action work implements a wide range of general plan policies, objectives, and programs. Climate action is contemplated in the conservation and open space element of the general plan, which directs the city to minimize undesirable climate changes. And the climate action plan is explicitly referenced in the land use and circulation element of the general plan, which directs the city to maintain and implement its climate action plan. Now, these policies don't just occur in a vacuum, but rather they reflect the level of priority that our community has historically placed on resource conservation, sustainability, and climate action. Council adopted the city's first climate action plan in 2014, and in 2020 adopted one of the most ambitious plans in the nation with a goal of carbon neutrality by 2035. Council reaffirmed this goal when it adopted the 2023 to 27 Climate Action Plan Work Program, and climate action has been a major city goal since 2017. The Climate Action Plan puts the community on a trajectory towards its goal of carbon neutrality by 2035. At the highest level, it does this by pursuing a clean and renewable electricity system, reducing energy use where possible by doing things like walking, biking, busing, building really efficient homes and buildings. And then for all the things that still need to use energy, plugging those into our clean electricity system. The other thing we do is keep organic waste out of the landfill. And this general approach aligns with how the state of California also approaches carbon neutrality. And the sectors covered by this approach, electricity, natural gas, on-road transportation, and organic waste, are the minimum required sectors as dictated by state protocol. When Council adopted the 2023 to 27 work program, they provided direction to continue focusing narrowly and deeply on these 4 required sectors, and staff has prepared the materials in the agenda packet tonight reflecting that direction. There will be an opportunity later, though, should Council want to affirm that direction or provide different direction to do so. The Climate Action Plan itself organizes the work described on the previous slide into 6 pillars and some administrative actions. Lead by Example addresses emissions from the operation of the city organization. Clean Energy Systems looks at emissions from the electricity grid. Green Buildings considers emissions from energy used in buildings and facilities. Connected Community addresses emissions from transportation. Circular Economy looks at emissions from landfilled organic waste. And Natural Solutions accounts for the emission sequestration benefits we get from the trees we plant and the ways that we proactively manage our open space, among other things. The administrative actions dictate how we do the work, including supporting community organizations, engaging in legislative advocacy, providing progress reports like the one we're providing tonight, and regularly updating the Climate Action Plan. The Climate Action Plan directs staff to update the plan every 4 years, just ahead of that particular year's financial plan process. The CAP update timeline also directs staff to come to Council with a progress report in the year before the Climate Action Plan update occurs. And tonight's study session makes good on that commitment. So that takes us through some of the background, and now we'll move forward into the actual progress report itself. The progress report is informed by technical research, comparative analysis, and stakeholder outreach. We reviewed state technical reports, academic research, 15 contemporary California climate action plans. We interviewed staff from other climate leadership cities and counties and conducted stakeholder outreach, including community forums, workshops, and direct presentations to organizations. And Lucia will share more information about our outreach later in the presentation. After completing all that technical and stakeholder work with support from the city's green team, we developed the progress report. The progress report includes an updated greenhouse gas emissions inventory and forecast snapshot, progress updates for all 6 Climate Action Plan pillars, summary findings from our research, and a detailed implementation matrix for every action in the 2023 to 27 Climate Action Plan work program. The progress report contains extensive detail on the implementation of every Climate Action Plan action. The slide that I'm going to walk through here summarizes the inventory and forecast findings from the agenda report and the appendix at a relatively high level. And we're going to compare where we are now to where we expected to be when the Climate Action Plan was adopted in 2020. It's necessarily at a high level given the time we have. We'd love to spend 4 hours with you, but we'll spend the time we have. But we will be happy to go into more detail on any of the sectors or any particular action should council have questions, and we're prepared to do so. So we'll start with the 2020 based forecast. So this is what we thought greenhouse gas emissions would look like in 2035 across our 4 core sectors: electricity, natural gas, organic waste, and transportation. And the green dotted line distinguishes regional from local transportation. With regional, accounting for roughly 1/3 of total emissions. And so this blue set of squares represents a no action forecast. So if we didn't do a 2020 climate action plan, this is where we thought our emissions would be as a community. The 2020 climate action plan reductions are shown here in yellow, and they show what we expect to achieve through our climate action plan actions and then ongoing actions achieved by the state and federal government, among others. We anticipated eliminating nearly all electricity emissions and most organic waste emissions by 2035, and we expected to cut roughly in half our natural gas emissions and have about 1/3 of our transportation emissions remaining. Now, together, this represents an approximately 70% reduction from baseline. And just to be clear, that shortfall of 30% from true zero greenhouse gas emissions was known at the time, and the Climate Action Plan explicitly acknowledges this and says something to the effect that new innovations and tailwinds would be necessary to close that gap further. So we knew there was a gap when we adopted it, and ultimately Council felt that the value of that ambitious goal was worth the uncertainty associated with it. So the next thing we're going to show is just our updated forecast based on all the information we've learned over the last 5 years. And these blue dashed lines represent the emissions reductions we would expect to achieve from our 2020 climate action plan if we weren't to make any updates moving forward. We still expect to experience or achieve significant reductions in electricity and organic waste, but we do anticipate falling shorter in the natural gas sector and in the transportation sector. In natural gas, this is a result of a number of things. One, just affirmation that building retrofits are really hard and electrification is a challenging project, but also changes in state regulation that have affected the price of electricity, for example, or the value of solar. And then really large federal programs we had anticipated to support this work disappeared over the last couple of years. In transportation, the emissions are expected to remain sort of higher than anticipated, largely in the regional VMT space. And this is largely because of the rural nature of our community, as well as some higher than expected regional economic growth forecasts. And so the bar here at the bottom is just a reminder, we always knew we had a 30% reduction. Our updated forecast shows us getting to about a 50% reduction. And there's really two ways of looking at this. On the one hand, this 50% reduction since baseline is still a tremendous accomplishment. But at the same time, it falls short of this council and this community's goals related to emissions reductions. And that gap, those shortcomings, really are the target we need to aim at as we update our climate action plan. The city's 2035 carbon neutrality goal is a local policy preference, and that sits inside California's evolving greenhouse gas emissions legal framework. The city's climate action efforts are now informed by 2 statewide greenhouse gas emissions targets that have been adopted or clarified since the adoption of the 2020 Climate Action Plan. So the first is SB 32, and that sets a 2030 goal to reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions to 40% below 1990 levels. And our analysis finds that with implementation of the existing Climate Action Plan, we are on track to achieve that goal. AB 1279, which was adopted after we adopted our Climate Action Plan, sets a 2045 regulatory goal of achieving net zero emissions, says as soon as possible and no later than 2045. And our analysis shows that the implementation of the current Climate Action Plan puts the city on track for an approximately 75% reduction by 2045, which is about 10% short of that AB 1279 mandated target. So this takes us to the key findings of the progress report. And the first is just that city leadership and investments have produced measurable results. They invite outside resources and demonstrate the effectiveness of sustained local commitment. And I think it's just worth elevating what Mr. Herman said earlier, that tens of millions of dollars coming to our community as a result of this leadership position. And that's not to, that doesn't even account for all the sort of benefits we've had from the networks we've joined. So our leadership position has allowed us to be parts of these networks of staff across California that provide real value to us and expand our ability to do our work serving our community. Second, we are facing headwinds that are stronger than we could have anticipated at the time, and that's really challenging our ability to achieve our goals. Third, it's been affirmed yet again that natural gas in existing buildings and regional trips are challenging and are really the main challenges to achieving our goals. And finally, persistent local innovation and creativity will be required to continue making progress.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. And hello, Madam Mayor and City Council. So now that we have a solid understanding of the policy background for local climate action and recent progress to date, we will begin the second part of our presentation about the forthcoming 2027 CAP update, which is the main focus of our study session questions this evening. As a reminder, the release of the 2026 progress report is intentionally timed to precede the next CAP update. Planning for the 2027 CAP will begin promptly after tonight's study session, and we will be brought back to Council for consideration and adoption in the first quarter of 2027. To inform Council's discussion and strategic guidance this evening, staff led a robust outreach process to gather feedback from community members and leaders about their desires for the 2027 Climate Action Plan and the future for local climate action more broadly. And this outreach informed the progress report and daylighted ideas about where to go next. Outreach included hosting 4 thematic roundtables with over 50 participants, 2 public workshops with over 30 attendees, and presentations to local boards. Across these outreach events, stakeholders provided feedback on what parts of the CAP should be set aside, what is working as intended, what needs to be improved or expanded, and if any new ideas should be included in the next CAP. The major themes we heard from stakeholders included an affirmation of the city's current approach to local climate action and carbon neutrality, and continued support for the overwhelming majority of actions that are in the CAP. 2, that having the value of an aspirational 2035 target has provided a lot of financial and other incredibly valuable resources for the city, and that it should be retained going forward. And 3, that many stakeholders, nonprofit leaders, and regional agency staff were really enthusiastic about collaborating with the city on hosting outreach events for the 2027 CAP update. And more recently, as expressed in agenda correspondence on this item, there's some emerging stakeholder feedback, and those themes include more closely integrating the city's climate and housing work and using climate as an organizing principle for some of the city's planning efforts, as well as a renewed focus on strategic administrative actions, like internal processes to increase impact, including keeping an eye towards how our regional agencies can help us reach our goals. And so this slide shows a summarized high-level digest, the top-line takeaways from all that we heard during our stakeholder outreach. And it also includes some of the topics that were identified during the technical research and comparative analysis part of this process. And given where we are in the 2027 CAP update process, these ideas are illustrative of the topics stakeholders want to explore further in the planning process. This list is not meant to be exhaustive, and more will certainly emerge throughout the year as we update the CAP. But as you can see in the left column of this chart, we have the longest list. It's essential ongoing actions. And these are CAP actions that have already been adopted by council, incorporated into major city goal work programs, and are in active implementation. It's affirming to hear community support for so much of the work that council prioritized in the 2023 to 27 CAP work program. But there was also some areas where community stakeholders identified opportunities to expand existing efforts or explore new ideas, and that's on the right-hand side of this chart. It's important to note that these new and improved ideas are intentionally focused on areas where the city is falling behind on reducing emissions, which are transportation and specifically emissions from regional trips, as well as getting natural gas out of our existing building stock. Chris and I will dive into those areas more in the following slides. So one area where we identified opportunities for improvement and expanded effort was in the transportation sector. This includes mobility innovations that support one or no car households and can reduce single occupancy vehicle trips, such as bike share, car share, and microtransit. These mobility innovations rely on public-private partnerships and are vulnerable to shifting market conditions. Efforts to advance these offerings locally are ongoing, and stakeholders in technical research affirmed that bike share, car share, and microtransit are important actions for making progress on our transportation emissions. Additionally, as the greenhouse gas inventory snapshot identified significant remaining emissions from regional trips, looking forward, there is an opportunity to expand efforts on regional low-carbon mobility solutions, including regional transit. While the city does not administer these programs, we have representation on the regional boards that do, and have opportunities to use that representation to shape future decisions related to regional mobility and transit. Another area is proactive legislative action. And this is a space where we don't have to wait. We're actually asking for strategic direction tonight from council to join the Local Government Climate Alliance in order to expand the city's ongoing efforts to engage in regulatory and legislative advocacy on climate issues. Staff anticipates that participation in the Local Government Climate Alliance, LGCA, could impact legislation in ways that makes the city's building and transportation work more affordable and feasible for the community, and is one way to increase the city's leverage in statewide decisions that materially impact our ability to take local climate action. LGCA uses a strength in numbers approach to shape climate-specific state legislation efficiently and impactfully. Currently, there are 14 California cities and counties that are members of LGCA, representing about 5% of the state's population, and the entity is currently fiscally hosted by the city of Santa Barbara. One key feature of LGCA is that it uses consensus-based decision-making. That means that if LGCA were to propose a position on a bill that falls outside of the city's action platform, which y'all adopted tonight, the city would cast a no vote, and the broader LGCA organization would not take a formal position on that bill. And with that, I'll turn it back to Chris.
Great, thanks. And so on to actions to improve, expand, or retry in the existing building space. And the two actions we highlighted in the council agenda report have benefited from 2 study sessions with this council over the last couple of years. So hopefully there's not a lot of new information here, but some new things have happened since we last spoke with council. So I want to highlight those and describe how those might be carried forward into a future climate action plan. So when it comes to actions related to retrofitting large buildings, we now have a much better idea of which of our buildings are above 25,000 and 50,000 square feet. And that allows us to begin working with existing resources to begin connecting those building owners with publicly available commercial retrofit incentives and rebates. And so that's something that we'll just do as part of our climate action plan implementation now. But we do recommend further analysis and potential inclusion of a large building retrofit action in the 2027 Climate Action Plan update that focuses on assessing the impact that those voluntary retrofits are having, and if needed to reach the city's goals, identifying and securing grant funding to potentially develop mandatory disclosure or retrofit requirements. For single-family homes, staff have been able to bring the statewide Home Energy Score program to San Luis Obispo, and we already have 7 assessors signed up for the program training, and we're still looking for a couple more. They'll be trained in May, and then that program will be live, and a certified independent assessor will be available to provide community members with assessments of the energy performance of their home, along with recommendations for improvements. Similar to the previous action, a potential action in the 2027 Climate Action Plan could direct staff to assess the effectiveness of that voluntary disclosure program. And if those results are insufficient to achieve the city's goal, to evaluate the potential costs and benefits of a mandatory disclosure or retrofit program. One of the recurring themes in our outreach was just a shortage of transformative new ideas. We thought maybe we'd ask people what the next big thing is or what the silver bullet was. And really, there's not a lot of big new ideas that we've come across yet. I think that really affirms the keep going and retry some of the actions, findings that we've made. But that said, we did hear a couple of new ideas, and we think they're worth continuing to explore. We will note that these are genuinely new ideas, though, and as such, there's a lot of uncertainty associated with them. These aren't things we are saying we can do tomorrow, but we are saying we should look into them further. Both of the new actions in the agenda report would address emissions related to buildings. The first would be an action to evaluate a city-led bulk purchasing and direct installation program for improvements like solar, battery storage, and heat pump, HVAC, and water heater systems. The other is to support safe plug-in solar and battery energy storage systems. And this action in particular would benefit the approximately 60% of SLO households that are renters or mobile home occupants. And we could go even further to create renter-specific programs that include not just access to plug-in solar and batteries, but also other zero emissions renter-friendly tech like over-the-window heat pump systems and plug-in induction cooktops. And while we're on the topic of new ideas, we've had extensive feedback this week about the importance of housing and climate action, and staff has several recommendations for how that could be integrated into the Climate Action Plan update, including enhanced collaboration between the Office of Sustainability and CDD in answering some key research questions related to the topic, and in collaborating on the housing element update in coming years. And happy to talk more about that if there's questions.
Awesome. So now that we've provided a high-level overview of some of the new and improved actions that emerge through the planning process, this slide provides an early estimate of how those actions, if included and implemented through the 2027 CAP, would impact future emissions for the city of San Luis Obispo. You can see that the new and improved actions in orange here would bend the curve downward, reducing the remaining emissions forecasted in 2035 and beyond. And these emissions reductions estimates would be fully vetted as part of the upcoming CAP update process, but are presented here to provide an early look at their potential impact. Based on tonight's strategic guidance, staff would identify the CAP actions and tasks that are required to reach Council's local greenhouse gas reduction goals, as well as state goals. But in terms of operationalizing these prospective 2027 CAP actions, specific budget allocations will be determined as part of the financial planning process, as typical with all planning efforts across the city. And the 2027 CAP will be presented to Council in early 2027 to inform the deliberative process that will create the 27 to 29 financial plan. Staff will continue to pursue external funding to the maximum amount feasible to fund the Climate Action Plan, but any specific actions that might rely on the city's financial investment to move forward will require additional council deliberation and approval. And our goal, as always, is to put forward a practical plan that can be implemented and leverages external funding wherever possible. One of the primary work efforts in developing the 2027 CAP is going to be engaging in additional community outreach. While staff will host the traditional public workshops and surveys, we're going to be focusing on hosting or participating in events that have a community service component, or that provide valuable information about resources and programs that support individual climate actions. Some examples of our planned outreach events include organizing a tree planting in open space that ends with a CAP feedback session, collaborating with community cultural gatherings such as Building a Better SLO's lecture series, or partnering with a local resource provider to get the word out about incentives and rebates that make sustainable living more affordable. Now to schedule and next steps. After the conclusion of tonight's study session, staff will conduct community outreach, technical research, and further evaluate the potential CAP actions guided by Council. This coming December, staff plan to publish a public review draft of the 2027 CAP, and in about a year from now, staff plans to present the 2020 CAP to City Council for approval. Okay. That takes us through the high-level overview of the timing, potential content, and outreach plan for the forthcoming CAP update, and brings us to key questions staff has for Council moving forward. Our first question for City Council is which of these potential actions should be further evaluated as part of the 2027 Climate Action Plan update? We've listed the new and improved actions described previously in the presentation below the question for council's reference, and staff recommends further evaluation of all 7 items included and requests that council flag any actions that they believe should not be further evaluated, as well as any new ideas not listed here that council would like to explore as part of the update process. Our second question focuses on the city's carbon neutrality goal. Staff is seeking council direction on whether it wants to retain its local 2035 target. In addition to the AB 1279 goal, it is required to adopt by the state. Under this question are a few options, including retaining the 2035 carbon neutrality goal as an aspirational target, or if not, whether council might like staff to include recommendations for what as soon as possible might mean in practice. And lastly, whether council wants to retain its existing narrow and deep approach that Chris described earlier to covered greenhouse gas emission sectors. And our third question for tonight is focused on community engagement and whether council has any further direction or feedback on the proposed approach for the 2027 CAP update. That takes us to the end of staff's report. Thank you for receiving our presentation, and we are now open for council questions.
Thank you so much. Even though I sat through a 221 meeting, it's still so much information that I'm still processing it all. This is a great amount of work, so thank you both for sharing this. And I also appreciate how you shared that, pretty much every department is in the room because that's what it takes. So going back to the home energy score, have you already engaged the realtors, property managers, slow tenants union, people who would be directly working with that energy score?
Thanks for that question. So we've met with gave a presentation at one realty office. We were invited and we'll be presenting on the 15th at the, I'm blanking on the name, but I believe it's the Women's Council of Realtors presentation at the Madonna Inn. And then we are planning on meeting with additional groups as you described. Right now, we're really focused on asking those folks to connect with their inspectors or other folks that might be in the home prior to a sale to see if they'd like to become certified. So if anyone would like to be certified, my contact information is in the staff report. But ultimately, we'll transition into then connecting with the realty community at large and providing access and information about how they can have their clients access that information.
Perfect, thank you. I know that during the green business process, it was a bit cumbersome. So just wondering that, however we can kind of help streamline things makes it always a little bit better. And then one other question, I'll pass it on. So when you talk about the new ideas and the bulk items, I mean, it's similar to back in the day with low flow toilets, right? We got to the point, it's just time for everyone to have these items. So let's get a discount and help people get the access. Okay, great, thanks. Councilmember Shorsman.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for kicking off the questions. You had something in your report, I think it was the ongoing actions list, where it talked about enforcing SB 1383. And organic waste is one of the areas in your chart that we've done pretty darn well, gotten pretty close to meeting our goals. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on what enforcing 1383 might look like.
Yeah, great question. And the 1383, the projected emissions reductions in 2035 really depend on ongoing SB 1383 enforcement through that time. And folks are having the associated behavior change with it. But certainly a specific implementation, I think, would be best answered by staff from that department.
Thank you. And yes, I'm asking this question strategically because I'm our representative on the IWMA, so I want to know how I can support this.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Shorsman. Rochelle Paris, I'm the Solid Waste and Recycling Coordinator for the city, current interim manager. So currently we have been using an education first approach to outreach with SB 1383, and we've been successful with that. So future enforcement would just be currently working with our waste hauler, with IWMA, to identify maybe any gaps. We do see some gaps with multifamily, with high contamination, with the high turnover. So we are currently working, next fiscal year, we'll be launching a new recycling program targeted at those communities. So, yeah.
There are certainly folks that, I'll just be honest about it, that have not been able to get over sort of the ick factor of putting their organic waste in their bin. Do we have any tactical ways of
So we see a big
battling that
uptick
problem?
on calls during the summer, during the heat, because that's when it gets stinky, icky, and the flies. So our recommendation is to freeze, primarily really during those hot season is you can even use like an old sandwich bag, put your food scraps in the freezer and put them out on the day of service. And that is a game changer for a lot of people. I've actually had someone stop me in the grocery store and say, you told me to put the food scraps in the freezer and it's been a game changer. So that really is the best recommendation.
That is a very tactical tip. I appreciate that. Okay, so that's my question on the solid waste issue. You alluded to, and I know we've had some agenda correspondence from the community, or not agenda correspondence, some community correspondence about how can we better integrate our climate action plan with our general plan and some of the elements that especially are coming up for reevaluation and update, the housing element, the land use and circulation element. How can we sort of operationalize and collaborate those documents all together? Yeah, did I not say the housing element? I thought I said the housing element. So yeah, the housing, land use and circulation in particular.
Great, thank you. And the Climate Action Plan itself is an implementation action in the land use element of the general plan, right? And seeks to reduce the emissions associated with build out of the general plan as currently adopted. And there's actually some really good parallels that have already occurred. And actually housing is one of them, right? In our current climate action plan, we commit to supporting CDD and implementing their housing element over time. Active transportation is another really good example. The climate action plan elevates the importance of active transportation in achieving our climate goals. And then operationally, we collaborate with mobility services to provide extra capacity to help out for projects or programs that could benefit from that capacity. And then we all sort of win because we reduce emissions, we have more active transportation programming. But the climate action plan itself doesn't say, here's where the bike lanes go, here's how many bike lanes we should have, here's the operating procedures. It defers to the active transportation plan, which is then developed, and then projects from that plan are put in the budget and they're built and operated over time, and really see a parallel with that in the housing element, where as we update our climate action plan, we can certainly articulate more clearly the close nexus between housing and climate action. We can convene community experts and staff to identify key research questions and answer those research questions. And then we can collaborate with housing and community development on including some of those innovative ideas in the housing element and then providing that capacity to implement it over time.
Excellent, thank you for that clarification. There was one last question I have. There was a chart in the report. It is on page 29 of the progress report. It's a back to solid waste again. It's solid waste emissions inventory and forecast. And most of your forecast tables, it looked like in the plan, get to a point where, we are current day, and then they show a dotted line, generally going in a straight line, whichever direction the line was solid, was pointing. In that one, I notice the total emissions line, the dotted part of the line kind of starts to curve a little bit. And I was wondering what is causing that sort of change in your forecast.
So the yellow line in that figure, and would it be helpful to bring it up on the screen?
If you have it, that would be great. I'm sure it would help everybody else. I'm looking at it, but yeah.
So in the lower left here, the yellow line indicates the annual landfilled, the tonnage of landfilled solid waste. And so the solid lines represent actuals and the dotted line represents forecast. So it sort of takes the decreasing amounts of solid waste, but then mitigates the steepness of that line because of population growth through 2045. The orange, or the sort of burnt red there, represents the greenhouse gas emissions associated with it. And it reflects the decreasing percentage of that waste that is organic. So as we keep more and more organic waste out of the landfill, we will see a lower sort of the ratio of emissions per landfilled ton should also decrease, but not in a straight line forever. So there's some sort of curving that happens in out years there.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that.
Thank you. City Manager, did you want to add to that?
Thank you. I was going back to our discussion of your green waste bins, and we did negotiate an ability to have your bin kind of swapped out. So I believe it's once a year. I'm frantically trying to confirm that. Oh, okay, see, we have some users, which is great. I know some folks have even gotten services to come kind of clean their bins out when they get to that ripe stage, but you can, and it was important when we renegotiated our contract with San Luis Garbage that we made sure that they would be willing to come out and swap it out. So I wanted to make sure folks were aware that's another option too, which hopefully will encourage people to continue using your green waste bin and look at the things that you can put in there, because it is a lot more than you might think originally, like, you know, animal-related meats and things like that that you might not think. So just want to make sure folks are aware of that. There is really good information on their website and our website about what is allowed in the green bin as well. So if anybody's concerned about making sure you're doing that right. So just thought I'd plug that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
And greasy pizza boxes.
Yes.
It's very exciting. That's right, the little guy in the middle. Thank you so much for your presentation, for taking all the time with us and 221s and all of that. You'd mentioned some of the struggles, and I think everybody's pretty aware of drying up federal and state funds and some of the challenges that presents. We got some interesting commentary from the Climate Coalition's correspondents around looking for additional funding mechanisms and spending some of our time and energy and staff power on that front. And just kind of curious what kind of capacity we have to spend time exploring those options. They mentioned that many communities are moving towards an entrepreneurial approach, and I'm not really familiar with what that looks like, and kind of curious if we have familiarity with that at this point, or if that's something that we need to spend some time exploring.
When we developed the progress report and looked into the potential actions moving forward, this wasn't something that was on our radar. So certainly happy to receive the letter and council's direction, do more research and understand what the options in front of us are, and to bring that back as part of the plan update with a recommendation or a follow-up that's not feasible here.
Certainly seems worth a conversation at this stage, just to kind of see what that would mean. And then coming back to a question that was just asked by Councilmember Shoresman, we've been really focused on creating a super walkable, bikeable community, really kind of focusing on infill housing, better transportation and bike infrastructure. But I'm kind of curious about if we have data or how easy it would be to get data on what percentage of our local and regional trips are job related. Kind of, if we focus on that angle, obviously that's going to take care of some percentage of our VMTs, but curious if we have an understanding of how much of that we could tackle through a better housing jobs balance in the community. And I know that's not a question you can answer today, but just curious if that's some data that we can get.
I'd be curious if Luke Schwartz has that information, and as he's coming up, one thing I will note, when we received the question about jobs housing balance and we were putting that answer together in the agenda correspondence, and we looked back at previous answers on that and we thought really critically about what that metric represents and how complicated and nuanced it is given the regional nature of our regional job center, but then also all the employers that are just outside of city limits. And so it seems really complicated. But when, I mentioned earlier that we'd want to identify some key research questions and put our best brains together to figure it out, that's exactly the kind of question that we had in mind.
Awesome. I loved that chart. It was super helpful, but just kind of curious about like percentage of VMTs too, if we could get that at that.
Thanks. Luke Schwartz, Transportation Manager in our Public Works Department. We do have that data. I don't have it in front of me. We build our travel demand model that we use to forecast traffic for city transportation and land use projects. It's refined based on statewide household travel data and other big data sources that are now available. So we could pull a percentage of the trips in and out of the city based on trip type. So whether those are home-based work or other types of trips, and could probably produce a VMT summary of those trips by type as well, if that's something that the council would find interesting.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Obviously, don't want to put more on your plate right now, but just as we're looking towards how we're going to navigate next steps here, it would be really useful data. Thank you.
Be happy to provide it with our friends and see the best time to share it with you all. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. I know that we had a recent addition of a park and ride in our county, and I think that as we see those options so that people can actually stop and then utilize bike or bus more often, I think that gives people an option. It also encourages carpool in that way. But just carpool to come and park here doesn't give the same feel. So thank you very much. Councilmember Shorsman.
Yeah, just one last question that just came to mind as I was thinking about the sort of bulk purchasing idea for certain types of improvements, home improvements. We'll talk about this probably a little bit more, but the concept of bike share and car share and micro mobility that you have as one of the things that you want to know from us if you should re-explore. The price of e-bikes, for example, has just gone down so drastically. And there were incentives from 3CE and some other organizations at the state level about e-bike incentives for purchase. And I'm just wondering, just thinking outside the box right here on the dais, if something like that, some kind of bulk purchase or some sort of incentive program I have questions about bike share. I'll talk about them a little more in deliberations. I always have, but just the functionality of that versus just putting more bikes in people's hands, especially of our residents, to help them incentivize reducing even 1 or 2 trips a week from a car trip to a bike trip. So just throwing that out there into the ether for consideration as you look at things for planning the 2027 plan.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, with that, we'll move to public comment, and then we'll get back to our comments.
Okay, we have 10 speakers. The first 3, Mary Gardner, June MacGyver, and Spencer Brown.
Hi. Instead of complaining during my public comment time, I am here to say good job and thank you. I'm Mary Gardner, and I'm speaking as a member of the SLO Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. The board supports the goals and efforts of the Climate Action Plan as an important part of maintaining a healthy business community, and I appreciate the priority that's being put on these issues. I'd like to add that traffic is a very real and growing quality of life issue, especially for the many of us who commute in from outlying communities. More housing in SLO is essential for addressing this issue. Also, real change can come as a result of the proposed self-help sales tax that I feel is in partnership with the Climate Action Plan. It would fund transportation programs throughout the county, and it's an important part of a successful Climate Action Plan. So thank you for all the work that you're doing and for keeping San Luis Obispo a vibrant place to live and work.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is June McIver. I'm here as the immediate past chair of the board of the Chamber of Commerce and the senior policy advisor at the Slow Climate Coalition. Right there is one of the reasons I love San Luis Obispo, that there is a nexus between these two organizations that might be adversarial in a different community, and that both of these organizations work well with the city in advancing our goals. And as I said before in this very room, one of the reasons that I am proud to call San Luis Obispo home is the city's inspirational leadership in climate action. As exciting as Victor Glover's trip around the moon undoubtedly is, this rock is all we have. While we cannot ignore our daily challenges, there's no more important issue than the health and future of our planet. This has long been recognized by your predecessor city councils, and your leadership in this area is truly inspirational. While the 2026 Climate Action Plan progress reports make it clear that there is a significant gap between where we are and carbon neutrality by 2035, we cannot back down on that goal. Audacious goals create urgency and engender creative solutions. We need to double down on that goal. I have great confidence in the city's green team and all of our community partners and the community at large to be innovative and to continue and increase the city's role as a leader in climate action. There are some specific areas that I think bear special consideration. Integrate housing and climate strategy. Climate and housing cannot be treated as separate efforts. Align the climate action plan with the housing element and land use and circulation element to cohesively reduce commute distances and vehicle miles traveled. Address regional transportation. The biggest barrier to meeting climate goals is regional transportation emissions, driven largely by workforce housing being located outside the city, or at least I assume it is, but I guess you'll find the data. More housing near jobs is essential, as is a regional approach to public transportation. Take a regional leadership role. In addition, focusing on regional transportation solutions, the city of SLO needs to take an active role in bringing the rest of the county along on our climate journey. There is no such thing as a climate island. Take a leadership role in shaping state policy. The city of SLO is in a great position to lead on state climate policy. We are undoubtedly a role model, but we can take that further, and I would urge you to join the Local Government Climate Alliance. Lastly, support local clean energy generation. Ensure that we are producing the energy needed to meet our electrification. And as you would not be surprised, I would urge you to support offshore wind development. Thank you so much for all your leadership.
Thank you.
After Spencer is Melanie Mills, Leah Brooks, and then Rachel Whalen.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and Council. Spencer Brandt on behalf of Central Coast Community Energy. I'm really just here to thank the City of San Luis Obispo and your incredible staff who have worked really hard to be at the cutting edge of climate leadership in our region. So for that, thank you. I'd also like to share something that I mention frequently when I'm before you, which is that 3CE provides rebates that are available not just for residential and commercial customers, but also to our member agencies. And the City of San Luis Obispo has really done a great job of utilizing those, over $500,000 that we've been able to contribute towards electric vehicle fleet installation of EV chargers, reach code development, and last year was the first time for us as 3CE that we were able to actually have our energy programs budget for rebates, whether it's member agencies, residential or commercial, fully subscribed. So it is a challenge, but it's a good problem to have because it means that our communities are really moving towards electrification. And the City of San Luis Obispo is definitely among those in terms of high utilization, particularly when it comes to the Electrify Your Ride program. Along with that comes a higher demand for electric vehicle chargers. And so we're certainly happy to see that as one of the continuing items within the climate action plan that's proposed. I will also share that possibly most significantly In 2025, we delivered enough clean energy to power 352,000 homes and businesses as the default energy provider for San Luis Obispo residents. And we're really proud of that because those are real energy projects that are in the ground. This February, the SunZia wind energy project came online and began delivering power to Central Coast residents. That is the largest wind energy project in all of North America, and we're so glad that we have a piece of that delivering energy for the Central Coast. Lastly, I will share that we would be happy to connect our energy programs team with your staff as it relates to e-bikes or any, particularly I think what would be useful for us is to see data as it relates to e-bike trips replacing these regional commute trips. And I will also say one more thing, which is that we have approval to join the Local Government Climate Alliance as an associate member, and we'll be really excited to help empower the work that our local communities are doing on that front from an advocacy perspective. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Hold on one second. Nope, there you go.
Okay. My name's Melanie Mills, and I'm the board president of Bike Slow County. Our organization supports the city's ongoing prioritization of sustainability in the Climate Action Plan and is grateful for the work done by council and staff to date. Looking forward, Bike Slow County is resetting. We have a new interim director, new board members, and dedicated staff who continue to deliver strong education, service, and safe routes to school programs while preparing to re-engage on city issues. We understand how much transportation contributes to pollution and support continued expansion of safe, comfortable infrastructure that helps more people choose bikes for everyday trips. While mode shift goals haven't yet been met, the remaining gaps do represent opportunities for meaningful progress. Bike Slow County is also ready to support staff with outside-the-box thinking on programs and projects that address regional trips. We commend the Green Team and Council for their leadership and look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Leah Brooks, representing your Active Transportation Committee. Protected bike lanes, bike ped signals, road diets, intersections safer for bicyclists and pedestrians, connectivity like the pathway between Ramona and Foothill. Thank you for supporting our recommendations to implement the Active Transportation Plan. There are more projects to come, including the South Higuera Street Complete Streets Project, Foothill Boulevard, and Broad Street. Thank you for your leadership in slowing traffic and increasing active transportation trips. Some of these decisions are really tough, so we really thank you.
Thank you.
After Rachel is Garrett Olson, Eric Viam, Megan Sousa.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and council members. I'm Rachel Whalen, the Director of Governmental Affairs for the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the Climate Action Plan update tonight. And I first want to thank staff for their amazing work on this and the council for your leadership. We appreciate the city's honest assessment of where progress has been made and where challenges remain. It's clear that transportation emissions continue to be the biggest barrier to meeting our climate goals, and that reality requires a shift in how we approach solutions. This is not just a transportation issue, it's fundamentally a housing and land use issue. When our workforce cannot live near their jobs, we are effectively designing longer commutes into our system. That means more vehicle miles traveled, higher emissions, and increasing pressure on our transportation network. If we are serious about reducing emissions, we have to address that root cause and create a clear path forward that connects climate goals with how we plan for housing and growth. We encourage the city to integrate the climate action plan with the housing element and the land use and circulation element. Doing so allows us to plan more cohesively, ensuring our policies are working together to reduce emissions, support housing production, and strengthen our local economy. We also encourage the city to thoughtfully consider how success is defined. Measuring greenhouse gas emissions on a per capita or per service population basis provides a more accurate reflection of San Luis Obispo's impact, particularly as we continue to grow. It recognizes that enabling people to live and work here rather than relocating to higher carbon regions results in a greater overall reduction in emissions. Demonstrating that we can reduce our carbon footprint while accommodating economic and population growth positions our city as a true leader in climate action. Finally, we support continued investment in local clean energy generation to ensure we can meet the increasing demand that comes with electrification. At the Chamber, we see this as an opportunity to align our climate goals with a more sustainable, economically resilient, and livable community. Thank you for your time and leadership on this issue.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Garrett Olson, the CEO of the SLO Chamber of Commerce and a local resident who walked here tonight and who truly enjoys seeing members of this council bike home after these meetings every Tuesday night. Your chamber celebrates the progress reflected in tonight's staff report. Staff's finding that by 2035, the city will essentially cut greenhouse gases in half, a genuine testament to the council's courage in 2020 when it was adopted, and at the time it seemed like an almost unimaginable goal. We applaud that. I'm here tonight to share our perspective that this is a significant inflection point for our community to go further in pursuit of the root causes of the most challenging issues in our climate action, the two intertwined issues of housing and transportation. While transportation-related emissions is the single biggest climate challenge, it is not primarily a transportation issue in itself. It is a consequence of our housing issue. Staff has acknowledged that the climate action on regional transportation requires attention and big ideas. In addition to Rachel's comments from our board position, we offer some of those big ideas for you tonight. First, align city policy, resources, fees, service, and culture with the vital metric of putting more housing where more people live and work, anchoring our housing activities in our bold climate goals, and eliminate impediments to building in a manner and space that supports our climate goals. Second, assist with the passage of the self-help half-cent sales tax effort, which will unlock millions of dollars in state and federal funding, thus allowing the city to be even more creative in creating and designing a local mobility plan that aligns our desired climate goals. But transportation infrastructure without housing reform is a half measure and a half success. We can build all the multimodal solutions in the world, and we should, but people have to live close enough to them to take advantage of their utility. The updated climate action must treat infill housing density not as a land use abstraction, but as a frontline climate strategy. When we place more homes in the urban core, near jobs, near transit, near the services the city already funds, filling in and building up, we reduce vehicle miles traveled at scale, resist urban sprawl, and make best use of existing city resources. Win, win, win. San Luis Obispo has a well-earned reputation as a climate leader. Your chamber is here tonight asking you to boldly take on the hard issues that remain, and we look forward to being partners and standing with you and rolling up our sleeves during this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and Council, my name is Eric Viam. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of the SLO Climate Coalition. First, we want to acknowledge the extraordinary work reflected in this progress report, over $57 million in external funding, a 20% reduction in community emissions, citywide organics recycling, 1/3 of the active transportation network built. This is what sustained local leadership looks like, and we're grateful for it. We submitted a written comment letter with our full perspective, including our strong support for reaffirming the 2035 carbon neutrality goal, but I want to use my time tonight to focus on 4 areas where we believe the city can strengthen its position going into the 2027 CAP update. First, research new models for leading on and funding climate action. The federal funding landscape has fundamentally shifted. Ann Arbor's sustainable energy utility, bulk purchasing programs, plug-in solar, exciting models are emerging around the country. We urge Council to direct staff to do deep research into where the leadership is happening and bring back a portfolio of approaches for Council's consideration. And to speak to the comment around entrepreneurship, our role in Community Choice Energy and Central Coast Community Energy is an example of the city's entrepreneurship and how that has and will continue to pay a high return on investment for our community. And we're confident there's numerous other opportunities for entrepreneurship in our community. Second, optimize the organization for what's ahead. The challenge in this progress report, building performance standards, transit innovation, regional coordination, are growing in complexity. We encourage Council to direct executive staff to conduct an honest review of whether the city's organizational structure, staffing, and resource allocation are positioned to deliver on climate and resilience priorities and to bring recommendations back. Third, strengthen regional board leadership. The progress report is clear. Regional transportation, electricity affordability, and waste diversion are shaped at bodies like RTA, 3CE, SLOCOG, and IWMA. The city already brings credibility to these tables. The opportunities to build on that with a more deliberate and resource strategy for shaping regional policy. The Climate Coalition would be a willing partner in that work. And then fourth, take an active role in shaping state policy. The CPUC rate decisions, interconnection delays, changes to solar compensation, these state-level actions are directly undermining local progress. The Local Government Climate Alliance is an innovative, low-cost tool to address this. We strongly support joining LGCA, and we urge Council to empower staff with the backing and freedom to shape the state policies that will determine local climate work succeeds. Thank you for your leadership and for listening.
Thank you.
After Megan, our final 2 speakers are Laura Albers and Barry Rands.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and City Council members. I'm Megan Souza, a City of SLO resident and SLO business owner and member of the Chamber Board of Directors. And firstly, I want to say how cool it is and how proud I am to live in a city that has long been a leader in environmental stewardship and climate action. That leadership matters, and it's just so cool that our community values that. So we have talked already about regional transportation and the problem of people who work in SLO not being able to live in SLO, and I just wanted to share my personal experience of this as an employer. So in my business, we aim to hire locally. We have a goal of 100% SLO County and 50% City of SLO residents among our staff. It's part of our community benefit agreement with the city. And every year we submit a community benefit report on our progress toward that goal. And I'm working on that report right now, due at the end of the month. And I have to say, every year we have a harder and harder time reaching those goals, the goal of 50% City of SLO residents in particular. And that's because a lot of our staff who were City of SLO residents at the time of hire have since moved. Their lives evolved, they got married, they had a kid, or they just wanted more stability to their life. And so renting a room in a shared house with a bunch of roommates, or living in unconventional converted spaces like garages or sheds, or even a walk-in closet like one of our employees used to live in, becomes just
unreasonable. And so they moved to North County or South County or Santa Maria and commute and cause more cars on the road, more congestion, more emissions. So I just want to add my voice to the other folks requesting that you really consider adding more workforce housing as part of the climate action plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening again. Laura Albers, but I'm actually here right now on behalf of Rita Casaverde, who went home to deal with babies. But I wanted to just share a few comments from her. Rita wants to say a big thank you from Diversity Coalition. The City of SLO has been a great partner in energy equity projects. The Sustainability Office has gone above and beyond to make sure that community members at most risk are prioritized during the energy transition to cleaner and more efficient technology. We, and this is Diversity Coalition, look forward to continuing supporting the Climate Action Plan. Diversity Coalition requests the city continues prioritizing equitable investments, partnering with community-based organizations and other local partners. Thank you so much from Diversity Coalition and Rita Casaverde.
Thank you.
After Barry Rands, our final speaker is Don Maruska.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. Barry Rands, I'm a member of the SLO Climate Coalition, and also Safety Director for the San Luis Obispo Bicycle Club. And the staff asked you to look at about 7 different proposals and to consider, which ones do you want to go forward on. And the first 2, I want to really highly recommend that you tell staff to go with these two, and those are listed number 1 and 2. They're related to transportation. Reevaluation of mobility innovations related to bike share, car share, and micro transit. And number 2, enhanced support for regional transit and EV charging infrastructure. On the micromobility bike share, we've been talking about bike share for so long, and I noticed that the only reason that it's not going on is because the city council the city does not want to have any skin in the game. It's making it, it's financially infeasible to do it on its own. But how much money do you spend subsidizing transit? Can't you put some skin in the game for bike share and get that going? And the other thing, micromobility. Electric bikes are great for getting people to work, to school, short commutes and that sort of thing, but they've got a bad rap recently. There are some accidents in town. Council Member Shoresman, you mentioned earlier in the evening about we've got to be careful when we regulate electric bikes, make sure we're not countering the climate action benefits that they have. So let's be careful about regulating electric bikes, and let's design our roadways, our bike paths and everything to accommodate electric bikes that go fast, but let's make it safe for them. And then the last thing I wanted to say is about charging infrastructure. Really happy that the new garage has 40-some places, but 50 cents per kilowatt, that's more than Tesla charges. And it's, Tesla is 5 times as fast, and you have to pay parking on top of that. Tesla doesn't charge you for parking. Reconsider how much you're charging there for EV charging in the new parking structure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Don Maruska, and I work at the front lines of climate in the community as a volunteer with the SLO Climate Coalition, the SLO Citizens Climate Education Program, EcoSLO, And through our Rotary Club, with our Plant It Forward program, Rotary San Luis Obispo de Tolosa, we're planting 100 trees a year for 10 years. And we're committed to do that through 2035 to deliver 1,000 trees out of the 10,000 that you're hoping to have. So we've got skin in the game. And one of the things that I've learned through that, and one of the things that we do with that tree planting program, is we do exactly what you're proposing as one of your recommendations. At every one of those plantings, we describe how it's a part of the city's climate action plan, what difference the planting a tree makes, how the 3 tons of CO2 taken down and converted into living carbon in the soil makes a difference for our breathing and for our lives together. So we're very delighted to be an active partner with you on those things. As author of the book, Solve Climate Change Now, Do What You Love for a Healthy Planet, we have the solutions. So we know what to do. It's how to get people to do them. And so I want to talk about a couple of things and speak to the specific questions that your staff posed to you for your discussion purposes. So first item, this is your question number 2, what to do about the goal. Stick with the goal. You know, President Kennedy, 8 years before the end of the decade in the 60s, said we're going to be on the moon. He didn't know how to get there, but he held to that goal. And you're 9 years away from 2035. Don't give up now because you don't know the specific path to get there. The second thing is, in that regard, this is your question number 1, what to do and what not to do. Shift from thinking about what is the path and feeling like you have to have the path all figured out. It's sort of like, you know, if you're going to go from Los Angeles to New York, you can't wait for all the lights to turn green. You have to start going and figuring out, you know, how you're going to get there. So, you know, so you shift from seeking a path and defining a path to defining a process to find a path. Looking for new elements, new partners, new strategies to go about doing it. And we can get there together because your question number 3 was how to engage the public. And this is where we really have a great resource. You know, work together creatively with the public and organizations like the SLO Climate Coalition here and the SLO Chamber and many others to accomplish what you couldn't even imagine now. Here's a very simple example. We're working on a pillar here in the community of green food systems. Those green food systems could have a simple way of capturing money from people that go for dinner and contributing that to regenerative agriculture. That would enable you to get credits for the greenhouse gases that would be recovered from those regenerative agriculture efforts.
Thank you so much.
Best wishes.
Thank you.
That was our final.
Okay. Thank you. Wow, a lot of great public comment. Thank you so much, everyone who stuck it out. I know a lot of you got here early, and thank you for that. There's so much information that was commented on, shared. Before we get into deliberations, just wanted to ask Lucia and Chris if you wanted to add anything based on anything that was said. They're pondering right now, some processing time.
Madam Mayor, I took notes anticipating that question, and there was a lot of broad information, and I think generally the presentation touched on a number of the items, and I think heard community answers some of the questions, and so I don't have anything additional to add.
I do want to go back to something that was mentioned around the only thing that's stopping us from bike share is money. And I remember these conversations from bike share when this first came along. And yes, money was definitely a big part of it. 2 was our own staff capacity. And 3 was, quite honestly, our less than ADA sidewalks in being an old town. So I know there's a lot more to discuss on this conversation around bike share, but I just want to kind of highlight that that was what I remember, and I just want to make sure if I missed anything on that.
Sure, so we can jump into the bike share conversation now if that's
Let's just do that.
So, okay.
I have lots of thoughts about that, but I'll come back.
So in 2024, Council approved the release of an RFP for a no cost to the city bike share program that was sort of pilot in nature. We had understood that there were several vendors that were interested in bidding in that kind of program. One example was the B-Cycles company, who is a subsidiary of Trek that operated in Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz. And so there were operational considerations that aligned with previous council direction. As part of that process, we came to the Active Transportation Committee and then to council for release of that RFP. And ultimately, that B-Cycles in particular was acquired mid-procurement process, and they had to pull out because of their own financial situation. And so we ended up with non-responsive bids, and I think we reported back to council that we're going to continue to monitor the situation, but that sort of procurement was a failed process. We have since then understood that there is at least one more large vendor that is interested in operating at no cost in the city. So what we're doing right now is just understanding internally what sort of staffing and operational considerations would go into that. What's different today than 3 years ago, or however long ago that was, 2 years ago. Doing some internal due diligence, and should there be a there, would plan on coming back to advisory body to evaluate that. And ultimately, if that looks good, bringing it back to you all for consideration. But there's a long way between today and that.
Absolutely. And I know that as we talk about partners, that's one of the other aspects is, if we're point A, we still need a point B to be able to get back to, and that other property may or may not be ours in point B. So thinking about what that looks like as well. Lots more to talk about on that. But Councilmember Shoresman.
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it's my recollection. I remember that process, that RFP process, and it was my understanding at the sort of the end of that process, at least at that point in time, there was, as you said, there were no cost to the city options. Anything that we were to invest in would have to be a financial investment from the city, and it would have been significant, and again, would have required pretty solid partnership with another organization, let's be specific, Cal Poly, to kind of make it really functional. And we would need to have a certain number of locations to kind of make it effective, really. You can't have bike share with only 2 ports where the bikes can be picked up and dropped off. That's not really functional for people. So again, I think there's a lot of complications with making something like that. So I'm seeing head nods, so that I was remembering that process correctly. Another thing that one of the commenters brought up is our transit system, and I think I just saw Alex walk out, so maybe he's listening again and he hears me, but I was wondering if we could get a little bit of a refresher, maybe when he comes back, of how our transit system is funded, because I think it's mostly federal funding and fares, but I wanted to clarify that. So can you, or I don't know who wants to answer that question.
I see Madeline coming up, and I will say from being on the RTA board, yes, it is the majority of it is, we have the certain amount of ridership ratio, but it is with federal funding that is not increasing right now.
Yes. Hello, Madeline Casenta, Assistant Director of Public Works. I will try and do my best, but yes, the mayor is correct. It is majority federally funded. And so we are working towards getting more of that federally funded program for this upcoming year. But of course, as we can see, that may move and change. We are tracking that appropriately as things shift.
And to piggyback on that, as things shift maybe from the federal level, is that another reason why there would be interest in the self-help sales tax? Because that might be, in addition to making improvements to infrastructure like roads and actual sidewalks and paving and all that kind of important stuff, it could also benefit regional transit if that was something that the county chose to spend some of the revenue on.
Yes, correct. We could use that funding towards transit and transportation.
Thank you. Yeah. I think those are my outstanding questions from the comments. I don't know if others have more.
Councilmember Boswell.
I just have deliberations, so I'll hold off if there are other questions. Are there other questions? No. We good? No? Go. Okay. Great. Thank you. All right, where to start? First place to start is, as a number of folks have mentioned, we should celebrate our progress. Our climate action plan has been very successful. even though we are showing a potential shortfall on our hoped for goals by 2035 at this point, I think the progress that we've made is quite incredible, and certainly positions us as a leader in California and even internationally in doing this kind of work. And it just shows that when we develop a good plan, we put real resources towards it, we build community partnerships, that we can make progress on this issue. It's often characterized as, well, what can we do, right? It's a global problem, it's huge, it's unsolvable, but I think we're proving that wrong. Second, I want to thank staff. I don't know who all knows, but climate action plan is what I do professionally in my work as a professor at Cal Poly. And so I spent a lot of my days talking to folks in this field and trying to stay up to date on what's going on. And I want to acknowledge our staff, Chris and Lucia and Bob. Everybody knows them around this state. We really do have the best team. We have the experts. And I was jokingly going to say, I'm going to say nothing else except Chris and Lucia and Bob get to work. Because I know you can deliver for us in this next round of this update, but of course I have more to say. Sorry. Yeah. So thank you again, and I look forward to the work that you're going to deliver on this plan. I also want to thank the partners in the room. I just even the testimony tonight, the groups that came and spoke tonight really are some of our key partners in this work, and there are of course many others who aren't in the room tonight. But really, that's the only way to get this done is through building partnerships. It really was the whole idea around the Slow Climate Coalition. It's called the coalition, or not instead of a club, or I don't know what else you'd call it, but it's called a coalition because it was built on the idea of recognizing that if we can get broad involvement from the community, we can be successful. And I think, again, that's proving true. A few kind of, I want to speak to kind of a few kind of key principles, and I'm going to talk to a number of specific issues, particularly those raised by staff. And some of these have been mentioned in a variety of ways already. I do really think we've talked before about the challenge in San Luis Obispo is we're very ambitious. We have lots of plans and programs, and we have a real challenge always in front of us of doing them all. So I do think we should really be thinking about the opportunity for this CAP update to help us align and accelerate implementation of our many supportive plans, some of which didn't exist when we did our last update. So some are new, but some existed prior to that. And there are many, but in particular, there's things like our active transportation plan, our short range transit plan, our general plan, but really especially our housing element with our housing goals and our safety element, climate adaptation and safety element. And again, there are others. And I really see this as an opportunity. I think one of the things that a CAP can really do for you is help make not only sort of help accelerate implementation of those plans, but really make sure those plans are working well together and not at cross purposes. And so I think that's something we should pay attention to. Is our housing element working well with our short range transit plan, for example? That came up as an item of discussion. A second and important principle I want to mention is, sort of really recognizing that as good a job as we are doing in the city of San Luis Obispo, I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter, because it absolutely does matter. But, if every city, we need every city in California, every city in the United States, every city in the world doing what we're doing. We can't do, we cannot do it alone. We will not solve this problem alone. The city of San Luis Obispo's global climate emissions are a fraction of global emissions. But of course, we also can't throw our hands up and say, we're not going to do it, because if everybody has that attitude, then we get nowhere. So we have to do our part, but I think we need to be much more assertive in asking that others do their part. And I know this came up in some public comment as well. I'll call out names a little bit. In this county, the county and our fellow cities in this county have not updated their climate action plans in over a decade. In some cases, even more than maybe 15 years, I think. I can't remember when the county's plan, I'm sure Chris Reed remembers when the county's plan was adopted. They're all effectively out of date. And we need to, I feel like we need to ask them to do more and to work with us to do more. And we stand ready to help them think about how they can do that. And so again, the notion of partnership and extending that partnership beyond just our city, but into our community and into our region. And I know we've got some ideas about how to do that. We need SOCARG and RTA to continue to work with us and to think about how we can continue to do more. And then we especially need Cal Poly as well, although it's always weird because Cal Poly is not officially part of our city. They're outside of the city boundaries. But for all practical purposes, they are part of our city. They're immediately adjacent to it. And, you know, one thing that's always bothered me is that whereas the city of SLO, we have a very aggressive active transportation plan, Cal Poly doesn't have an active transportation plan. And we know that a considerable portion of both existing pedestrian and bicycle trips, but potential lie with Cal Poly faculty, such as myself and staff and students. And so I think through our planning activities, we as elected officials can do more to ask more of of the other folks within our county and within our region. But I think we can also look within this climate action plan to be maybe a little more explicit at identifying where we need help and cooperation in achieving our goals from those other entities and what that help and assistance looks like. So I would encourage us to continue to do that kind of work. Let's see, what's a couple other, and then the final thing I'll mention as well, it's really kind of related to this, but you know, we have a lead by example plan for the city operations, and the idea is that we as a city government entity, we do what we need to do, and we demonstrate that to the community. I think we ought to continue to look for opportunities to tell our story beyond the city and beyond the county. Again, we're doing a lot of great things. We've had a lot of great success. And I think we have a moral obligation to spread that word and try to ask the rest of the global community to come along with us to the extent we can. I did want to mention, I did want to talk just a little bit about a few of the specific staff questions. So staff asked us about a number of issues and whether we would support those. I went through your list. I didn't see anything that I would not want you to do. I know you're going to need to be a little strategic too in what you can and cannot do, but I didn't see anything I would take off the list. And so I'm fine to say yes, move forward with, continue to explore the things that you've proposed. And I'll speak to the carbon goal in just a minute because I know that's a very particular question. On some of the specific issues, you know, our real challenges are around transportation and the existing built environment. I just want to continue to reiterate support for doing as much as we can on regional transit expansion, but also innovation. Thinking about other possible ways to think about solutions to our regional transportation problem. Second is on housing. You know, housing policy is climate policy, something I say all the time. Increasingly, we're hearing about that. It's been spoken about tonight a little bit. You know, we import a noticeable portion of our workforce every day. We heard some stories about that. Many of these folks that we import in our workforce are in service industry or often lower paying jobs, and they're having to make hard decisions. Not everybody wants to live in SLO. That's totally fine. Some people want to live at the beach. I appreciate that idea. But there are many folks, and I've talked to many, who would prefer to live in SLO and who cannot make that choice, or who did live in SLO, but as we heard, through changing life situations, cannot afford to effectively stay in San Luis Obispo. Those folks, we need to offer them an option. And in doing so, not only do we address our housing challenge and a whole set of social equity issues, but it also works to address our regional transportation problem and reduce our emissions. I think we need a recommitment to our mode share goals that we have in our general plan and our active transportation plan. And then on building retrofits, it's pointed out that so much of our existing built environment is serving renters, over 60%. Recently, I was at a conference where they talked about this idea they called direct to renter benefits. And the idea was thinking about how we could finance and incentivize the adoption of technologies that renters could essentially take directly with them. And we heard some of the examples like the plug-in solar, although we need state action there, and portable window heat pumps, which are pretty much ready. They're basically is a ripe technology, but there are some issues. We need some additional progress on that. And then let's see. One small suggestion, I think, and Chris, I'm sure you'll be familiar with this and the way the state reports their emissions reduction. I think it's important that we tell the story in our climate action plan that we have been growing our population, building housing, and growing our economy in this city at the same time that we have reduced emissions. This is not a competition. A lot of times environmental issues have been framed as a competition between economic development and the environment. But the state of California has demonstrated and has data, the state has data on this, showing that we have effectively decoupled the state economic productivity from its use of energy and its climate emissions. And we've done that here locally as well. And I think we need to make sure we tell that story, that economic growth and development can occur and can occur, I think, in a better way ultimately, while we also improve our environment and reduce our emissions. Finally, on our carbon goal, I want to encourage us to continue to maintain our 2035 carbon neutral goal. Yes, it is aspirational, and it is true that we do not have all of the answers for how we will get to that goal. But we know that a big impediment to our ability to reach that goal has been some recent changes, both at the state and federally. And it's certainly my hope that in 1,018 days, our federal headwinds will go away. But I think that we need to remain hopeful and optimistic and positive and strive to reach that goal. If we don't get there, it's okay. I think it's important for that to be said. But I don't see any downside in trying to set high ambition and seeing if we can get there. So I'll be supporting us maintaining the 2035 goal. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Shorsman.
Councilmember Boswell, I'm not sure there's much left to say. I'm just teasing. No, you covered a lot of ground there, so I'll just try to hit the highlights a little bit to just put a little bit more emphasis on some of the things that I think are the most important. First of all, thank you. Councilmember Boswell did an outstanding job of recognizing the work of our team. What our team has not said out loud today is that we actually have an award-winning climate action plan. So not only do we think we're doing a great job, but other people think we're doing a great job too, enough to give us, to give our team an award for their work. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. Just to hit on the things that I think are the most important to continue to look forward to in our 2027 CAP update. And I'll just get straight to it. I agree with Councilmember Boswell on maintaining the goal of carbon neutrality by 2035 for all the reasons that he already said. I won't go into to repeating them. I think it's just really important that we keep that goal, and we need to keep going that direction as quickly as we have, just to even get to the 2045 goal. As we said, we're not really, even with all the great work we've done, we're not on track to hit that 2045 goal the way the state is wanting everybody to. And I can't imagine how others who are doing less than we have are even gonna be close to reaching that goal. So I'm glad we're ahead of the game as much as we can be on that. I love some of the innovative approaches and hope that there's room for more exploration of those as we go forward in the 2027 planning process. Yes to the LGCA. yes to the energy assessor program, yes to city-led bulk purchasing and plug-in solar, if those are really real options, especially as Councilmember Boswell mentioned, anything that we can do to help our very large renting population. I feel like they really have been left out so far in the process of rebates and home energy analysis. And I know the city has done some important work with mobile home residents, and that has been great, but it's at a very small scale. So I think there's an opportunity for maybe our renter population is the next low-hanging fruit of, home energy efficiency. And I would love to see us try to support that group a little bit more. I'll echo his sentiments about greater and greater alignment over time between our climate action plan and our general plan elements, especially the housing element. We've heard a lot of advocacy from the chamber on that issue, and I think the more we update, all these updates don't happen at the same time, right? We update our climate action plan, and then we update our housing element, and then we update our loose, and then we update something else, and then we update our climate action plan. So over time, hopefully they can become force multipliers for each other in a way, and build upon our goals and become more and more aligned over time. I also love the idea, we are policy analysts to a certain extent on this council, and I love the idea of slicing and dicing the data in different ways. The suggestion that we've gotten from the chamber and from Councilmember Boswell about measuring our carbon footprint in maybe a per capita way. I think the data that you produced in the agenda correspondence was super fascinating, just to see how we stack up in that jobs housing imbalance compared to some of our neighboring cities. Fascinating, and hopefully there's something useful that we can do with that data, especially for making regional arguments with our partners to help bring others along with us on this journey. And I think I've covered most of it, and I guess I'll just close with another plug and appreciate the comments that we got from the audience about finding the nexus between climate action and our local sales tax measure. Obviously, that source of funding that we have been missing out on for a very long time will help us hopefully improve on some of those regional transportation issues, as well as improving our roads and I was going to bring up bike share. That's the other thing that I was going to mention. I think of all of the things, all the strategies that you all have brought forward and that maybe we should look into, and I've mentioned this in the past, is that I think without really safe roads and bikeways and pedestrian access that people feel safe using, a bike share is a secondary tool. If we don't have the infrastructure to support it, I think a bike share isn't going to have as big of an impact as just improving the infrastructure itself. So in terms of where we're going to spend our money and our energy, not to say that I'm against, because I'm not against bike share at all. I just think that we have bigger priorities that if we work on those first, then bike share will be more effective later. So I will end it there.
I think it's yes and, but I'll wait. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, kudos to my colleagues for all of their outstanding comments so far. I've agreed with everything that you've had to say and appreciate the thoughtfulness behind it. I desperately needed some good news and some hope, and I'm just so grateful to our, as we've mentioned, incredible staff and to our community for coming out for this and for being supportive over the last 6 years of tackling and actually making incredible progress on this front. So I'm just going to say, let's stay the course, and also, of course, keep alert for opportunities and innovations as they emerge. But I think we're headed in the right direction. I'm really grateful for where we are right now. I think there was one of our correspondents, called this a moral imperative, and I couldn't agree more. I also really appreciated the comment from Dawn earlier about the Kennedy story. Sometimes we've just got to set a goal and then figure out later how to make it happen. I always appreciate that anecdote. I also really want to thank Councilmember Boswell for his comments about the importance of regional and global partnerships. Obviously, focus on where we have the most power here. The imperative of getting more urgent movement from our neighbors, supportive of the plan calling out where we can better collaborate and support those partners, and looking for ways for you and for us to be more active in that realm. Coming to the list of the 7 items, I'm supportive of all 7 items, especially any program that assists renters in utilizing solar, battery, heat pump technology. I think that is, as Councilmember Shoresman called out, maybe our next low-hanging fruit, and I know there's a huge demand for it from our community members. Also supportive of joining the LGCA. Did I get the acronym? Yes, all right, great. Also, absolutely, yes, 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 more infill housing. Would love the idea of more explicit integration of our housing element, active transportation, short-range transit plans, and loose among all the rest of them. Make all of them melded together with our climate plans. We've got awesome opportunity coming up with our updates of several of those, so looking forward to continuing this conversation. Also really looking forward to our chamber and development partners helping us figure out how to get progress utilizing some of our programs that are already in place, like flexible density, provide feedback on what programs would unlock more housing in our downtown core. And of course, coming back to the comments from Ms. Souza earlier, making sure that that housing is safe and stable for our community as well. Really interested in following up on what new approaches to funding would mean. I know Climate Coalition had some ideas there, so we're already, of course, working with them, but continuing to explore, how do we deal with the changing face of federal funding, and hopefully that's short term. But if not, what does our future look like? How are we going to fund all of these projects? And very much supportive of an idea mentioned by Councilmember Shoresman earlier about the exploring at least the idea of bulk e-bike purchases or incentives. I was a long-term skeptic of e-bikes as an old school biker who thought it needed to be all manual power, but man, my life has been changed by my 3CE subsidized e-bike. I can wear high heels and get to work. It's a total game changer. So if we can do anything to unlock that for more people, I put like 1,000 miles a year on that thing. So it would be great to have more people in the community be able to do that. I will leave it there for now and pass it on to the mayor.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for all that's already been said. It's hard to go last sometimes, but I have just a few things. So as said already, we can't thank you enough. Truly, this is hard work, and I know you're constantly dealing with complicated, difficult things, trying to figure out if innovation's working or not, trying to figure out how do we help people not fall through the cracks. I know that we've had a lot of conversations about that, and the easy, I guess not really easy, but easy things for me to say yes to is, I think whenever we bring people together and try to advocate together, many people together makes a much better concentrated effort. So of course, LGCA, I say yes to that. I wouldn't say easy that it's going to be easy to get to 2035, but it's easy for me to say, yes, let's keep on with that goal. I will say with that goal, if and when there is a point in time where you as staff do not see that possible, I depend on you to tell me that. So I just want you to know that, because I'm going to keep going, but there's this point where if you are looking at us like, I can't do this, stop telling us to do something we can't do. Please let us know. With that said, not just today, we have a lot of partners in the room, and I'm just going to say, yes, we need you, thank you, and we will be calling on you, and there's more partners we need. There are things that I look at that I am constantly looking at I guess the what's the worst that can happen, right? How do we get people, I don't mean severe fatal collisions, I'm saying how do we get people to make these modal shifts? And I'm gonna be a little flip, but I do mean this seriously. People don't want to get on a bike for medical reasons, for difficult physical reasons, for don't want to mess up my hair reasons, don't want to come in that outfit reasons. we have these reasons in our community that we need to help people get over. So whatever that looks like, I think that's where we really probably can use our partners. I think there's an aspect of what else could we do? I think there's a bus and bike concierge aspect that we're kind of missing to get people that could maybe consider changing their mode of transportation for a day or two, because honestly, it's a little overwhelming to look at the bus schedule and try to figure out how you're really going to get from point A to point B. It's complicated. It's difficult. How am I going to do it? How am I going to get all of the stuff on my bike that I need for all my errands and all the rest of the things? So I think just something that can be done, not necessarily from the city itself, but maybe through partners. How do we kind of manage that anticipatory fear that people have? How do we get people over that bridge? And I think we did that with 3CE with energy. And I think we have more to go. There's still more fear out there about renewable energy, but we're showing people how that works. We're showing people the SunZia. We're showing people the solar and what we're doing. And yes, there needs to be change in laws, but that plug-in solar and battery energy, can you imagine the change that can give for renters? I mean, that is huge. As a renter, there's just so little you can do to your house without worrying about your deposit being taken or having to pay even more than your deposit, for example. So that's just a fabulous concept. The other part, I feel like we had an uptake for a while with car share and then it didn't. And I think that was a huge security blanket in a sense. Yeah, I can take my bike because worst case, if I have to get out there, I can jump on a car share. So Zipcar, there's like 3 of them on campus. I'm being a little facetious, but there's not many. There's not enough for the students as is. There sure is not enough for faculty and staff. So Zipcar may not be it, maybe it's something other brands, but this is for not just Cal Poly, but all over the city, wherever you're going to walk or ride, and then all of a sudden you have to run an errand out to Costco or whatever it might be. Close to impossible. Your kid needs to go to the doctor all of a sudden. You have to pick up your kid because they fell. Like there's these reasons that come up that are real. And so how do we help people in those moments? I think the other thing is I was surprised when I did my my RTA ride. So cool to watch how the bike thing comes down, the bike rack comes down, you can put your bike on, that's so awesome. So you can do this combination between bike and bus. However, e-bikes are pretty heavy and can't handle all the e-bikes. So as we think about this and we can get more people onto e-bikes and doing modal shifts, how do we help with that? And what's the quantity max? What does that look like? And this is where I think that bike share could come really in handy, is you can get on the bus. You don't have to bring your bike because then when you get to that bus stop, i.e. the city hall, you can just jump on that bike share and go that last bit. Maybe not the last mile, but the last half mile, the last whatever that's just a little bit too much to walk or take all your stuff. The other thing I'd say, going back to buses, there have been people who have shared that they can bring a couple grocery bags full, but they can't bring like your whole entire week's worth of groceries onto the bus even. So thinking about there are these things that stop people from doing these modal shifts, and how can we help with that? Seems wild because when we think about any of the large cities, you just can use the, what do you call it? It's like a rack with wheels. Anyway, I mean, there's opportunity and it shouldn't be this difficult. So why we can't bring groceries in any sort of large amount onto a bus locally seems wild. Of course, yes, housing near jobs. That sounds great to say, but we have not managed to figure out any sort of puzzle on workforce housing, missing middle housing, whatever the magic word that we want to use that is unofficial. We have a problem there. We have a problem without real partners, and we have a problem without real additional funding. So we can say we want that. Sure, we do, of course. And how does that happen? I love that CDD, Community Development Department, does developer roundtables. And I'm almost feeling like we need that roundtable between the community and staff, or policymakers and staff, because I feel like we still, again, have that anticipatory fear, that bridge that's missing, which is we're a pro-housing city. Why can't we get some of these things to yes? And so I feel like there's a both and when it comes to developers and our own city. And what does that look like? As far as EV charging, continue that, yes, please, more and more that we can. One of the things we talked about early on for me on the council was we looked at all these different opportunities, Rivian and ChargePoint and da-da-da, but the more that we got different ones, the more complicated it was, and it wasn't really working smoothly. So with that, it seems as though we have a limitation. If you have few people, they're going to have whatever rates they feel. So without more competition, what do we do with that? I just came back from a 4-hour trip, and looking at where we could stop, it was different in different places, and there was anywhere from 34 cents to 55 cents a kilowatt. So what makes it that number? Is that something that we are getting into? It sounds like that's kind of not the city's place, but if there's a way that we could know more of that information and make that work, that would be great. And I love the idea of bulk. I think I already said that. Sorry if I repeated. I'm going to go back to what Councilmember Boswell said. I shared it in our 221s. I'm all about telling our story. The more that we can help people picture in their minds, not just what we've done, which is great, and we should be shouting from the rooftops on some of these things. Thank you, Councilmember Shorsman, about this is not just we're just saying we're doing a good job, like literally the nation has. I've been trying to figure out, like, how do we get more people to understand, like, the awards that some of the city departments have achieved are not just in this little tiny world. This is like huge. But that being said, also when we first started the climate action plan, it was, okay, how do you picture? What does it look like if everything worked perfectly? Picture yourself in 2030, picture yourself in 2035. What does that look like? And I think the more that we can help people picture it, then it becomes easier to do, because all they can picture is what doesn't work and how the barriers. So if we can just help people picture getting over those barriers, that would be amazing. So lastly, I want to go back to that workforce comment around another partner that we need to have at the table is the K through 12. The labor trade, skills trade, having people picture what it means to be in different types of jobs that may or may not include higher education, not trying to stop higher education, but we've talked about a second grader does not think about what does a radiology technologist do? Like there's just not that's not like you're like, think about a firefighter, think about a first responder, think about a teacher. Like we have these images, right? So how do we help more people picture different things? Can they picture, wow, I could be one day working at an EV charging station? No, that's just not something that comes out and is like an obvious picture. So how do we help get some more of the workforce jobs as opportunities in front of people? And what is that? When coding boot camps became a thing, it was like, you could do this in a short period of time and have a decent paying job. We have this ability with the climate action plan to do the same thing. So that's just the other partner that I think, let's make sure we have the workforce partners at the table and the education table partners at the table to get them to that work job, good English, that career path. Thank you for listening to all of that. I don't see any more on the screen, no more comments. So I think we've answered all your questions and probably more than you wanted. Thank you so much for your patience with us. Anything else we're missing?
Madam Mayor, is it okay if we just walk through the questions to make sure we have, okay, so the first question around the 7 items, it sounds like continue evaluating them, heard some of the considerations around bike share, both concerns and opportunities, and so we'll hold that as we evaluate that further, but otherwise can continue to evaluate these, and if we hit a roadblock, they may not appear in the climate action plan. We can share why, but perhaps if they're successful, they will be. One of the questions I had is there were a number of items that community members brought up during their testimony that shared, this could be something you could look at. This could be something you could look at. And council referenced a couple of those. And I just want to check in. Was there any items that community shared that in particular you would not want us to explore further as we evaluate? I know it's hard to recall everything, but I'm trying to think through. I want to make sure that if as we catalog those, there's nothing in there that felt like an obvious red flag.
Councilmember Shorsman?
Repeat
Sure,
just a
sure.
few
In
highlights
part-
to
yeah.
jog our memories, but otherwise I would say probably
Yeah.
they're probably all good.
And not necessarily asking like if they're all viable today, but there's anything you would want us to look into. And in particular, I'm thinking through, so like we have clear feedback on the housing and climate nexus, so that's clear. With the Climate Coalition letter, we had some clear feedback on evaluating like funding or entrepreneurial opportunities. And so that sounds like supportive of evaluating that. There was also some discussion in there around sort of like the organizational approach to climate and both internally and with our regional partners, and confirming that's something to continue to evaluate. And then in particular, I was interested in Mr. Maruska's comments around just like the way that we even like think through the green lights from here to New York. And I'm not sure what that looks like in practice, but just as we're developing the sort of strategic planning framework, just confirming that like the way that we have it now is likely how it will look into the future, but there might be some flexibility in what that looks like.
I think the entire climate action plan has been that. It has been, we want to get to 2035 and be carbon neutral. Do we have to re-look at how we are measuring? Do we have to look at different, I mean, we weren't even thinking of plug-in solar before, right? So we don't have all the green lights, but I think that's exactly what you're doing.
Great. And on question 1, is there any other? Okay. On question 2, clear direction to retain the 2035 target. I want to confirm here that we want to retain the current approach of focusing narrowly on energy, transportation, and landfill solid waste.
It's fine with that. Councilmember Shorsman?
I guess I actually wrote this down, like, what would broad and shallow look like? You know,
Sure.
like, how do we not go narrow and deep and continue down the path in the areas that we're going to? I'm not sure what the opposite or an alternative would look like.
So some of our peer cities have considered things related to emissions related from consumption of food or goods, have looked at emissions related to like airfare, for example. So air travel of our community members as they go to the regional airport and then travel. Is that something we want to account for and have strategies around? Ultimately, we don't recommend that. We think it's important to stay focused, but just wanted to make like that's a critical technical task for us that's important to have clarity on now as we move through the year.
I guess I'll say then it seems to tackle the things that we have the most control over. And even as we've pointed out today, the transportation housing imbalance is a statewide problem and a regional problem, but at least we can kind of wrap our arms around that, maybe. I mean, I'll leave it to you in your planning process over the next 6 months or so as you work on the plan. That seems at least a little bit more approachable, but I wouldn't even know where to begin with things like airfare and, yeah.
Councilmember Boswell?
Yeah, there's a lot of climate action plans out there where the city has identified 100+ things they're going to do, which is ridiculous. They're not going to do 100 things. And so their climate action plan really becomes, well, what it doesn't become is an actionable document. And I think that in our first climate action plan, the very first one the city had was a little bit like that. It was a little bit of a laundry list of policy ideas. And I think it was a smart decision. I know some of you were here then, a smart decision to shift to a little bit more of a strategic approach, not try to tackle every single issue. I always remember the story when the UK decided to quantify the emissions from asthma inhalers, not a joke. And it's like, is that a good use of somebody's time in terms of, overall emissions profile? Probably not. And so I assumed that the narrow and deep was reflecting this idea that we are not going to try to solve every emissions problem in this community. And instead, we're going to look at where can we have big impact and where can we, make sure that we are going deep on the item, like we're really trying to make a difference in that item. And I would continue to support that approach rather than kitchen sink.
I do have one question with that. I don't know that we are the people to do it, but talking about landfill, and I kind of go back to our wharf and I think about the methane gas that's released are we looking into any sort of sequestration or capturing of that gas?
For the Lead by Example plan, we quantified the emissions associated with, some occasional fugitive emissions from methane there, and then also the combustion of the methane on site for on-site power. And we provided that as an informational item. I think that's linked in the agenda report, actually. And so we do look at that. And one of the only downside to going narrow and deep, in my opinion, is that you do miss out on some of those good stories and some of the really great work that people are doing. And in particular, the folks at the Wharf have really mitigated the environmental impacts of that critical city service in a way that's really compelling. And I think our recommendation would be to continue to tell that story in the Lead by Example planning framework.
Thank you for that reminder. And as with 1383, I guess I'm wondering if we'll have a bigger opportunity as we have more of the food waste kind of separated and organic waste separated, and maybe we'll have more ability for that as well. Thanks.
So that, I think, provides answers to the key questions that give us clarity on how we'll move forward through the planning process. So unless there's anything else, I think we'll say thank you for that.
Thank you so much for a great study session. We really appreciate all of your work and a great report. And with that, we have one small, easy thing left to do, which is liaison reports and communications. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I have an abbreviated list. I was lucky enough to get to celebrate a little spring break with my family with the slow coastal break that just happened. So I did, though, have an opportunity to join the Slow NOR Volunteer Appreciation parties, and that was really lovely to get to meet all of the nurses and physicians and volunteers that make that service work. So that was fantastic. And then 2 items that I attended with, I believe, everyone here, which was the Rigetti Ranch groundbreaking, which, yes, finally, and Mid-Hagera Wrap Party, another major celebration, kind of one of those items that flies under the radar a little bit. I don't think people are quite as excited about the Mid-Hagera bypass, but man, it's going to be really a game changer, I hope, as far as mitigating some of the floodwaters that we saw in 2022, and what an awesome celebration. So I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Councilmember Schwarzman.
Yes, thank you for touching on the ribbon cuttings. And then right before our last meeting, I think, was the parking structure ribbon cutting. So we've had lots and lots of things to celebrate lately, which has been fun. Also got a chance to go to the Community Academy for Public Safety Night. Always a good experience, and love the engaged community members asking lots of good questions of our public safety chiefs. And La Loma Adobe had an open house this past weekend on Sunday. They have done so much work on that building, and they have just uncovered some fascinating history. They still have a ton of work to do, but they have uncovered a lot, and they've put floors in the building now, and they are off the grid, but they have a little bit of electricity in the building so that they can see what they're doing in some of those dark old rooms. So it's pretty fascinating. I would encourage you to try to get an opportunity to go look at that. And then yesterday, I think it was, yesterday I spoke to some students at Cuesta about the single vote process. So had a group of about 7 or 8 students that had lots of great questions, and their faculty advisor who had some great questions as well. And they are hoping to get involved and help out with some of our voter registration activities. So I connected them with staff to do that as well. So lots of fun.
Nice. Councilmember Boswell.
Thank you. Yeah, let's see. What is today? Last Friday, I was able to attend the Slow Climate Coalition's strategic planning retreat. They had an all-day retreat to put together their strategic plan. They're almost a little bit on parallel paths with us, so that's great. On April 1st, I attended the Water Resources Advisory Committee. I'm actually the alternate, but Councilmember Marks wasn't here, so I attended in her stead. On, let's see, I think we got to go back. March 19th is in play, right? March 19th was LAFCO, but there was no city items on it. And also March 19th was the CAPSLO Board of Directors meeting. I don't have anything to report out from that. Also attended the Mid-High Wrap Party and the Ready Ranch groundbreaking, which just felt so good to do. And then the last thing, I just want to congratulate Cal Poly alum Victor Glover for flying around the moon, showing us what's possible. I believe they're on day 7 and they're on their way home, so I wish them all a safe journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. I loved his Easter message. So let's see. I know, trying to think about the last 2 weeks. So on the 24th, went to tour the Echo shelter in the Atascadero and their new future homes. So that will be expanding their capacity, which is really cool. And why am I talking about Atascadero? It's because it's a regional issue, and we are all working on, CAPSLO or CAPSLO or Echo or 5 Cities Homeless. We are all working on this together and trying to help people who are unhoused to be able to find access to services and housing. I'm also looking forward to working on furnishing the Welcome Home Village tiny home with Councilmember Shoresman and maybe a few others. I'll have a little sign-up genius to go out if people wish to add to the home to make it feel homey, whether it's towels or cleaning supplies or pantry supplies, etc. Also, I went to the Mid-State Fair Annual Awards last Friday, and it was 80s theme because this next year is 80s theme because it's the 80th anniversary of the Mid-State Fair. And I have to say, one, the awards were fun and it was great to see everything, but we were actually on the CMC as nominated for an award of all of the fairs of all of the counties throughout the U.S. Like, that's pretty cool. We didn't win, but the other people who were in the same category, they have like 1.2 million attendees, 1.7 million attendees, and we have in the 300,000s. So the fact that we were in that, again, our community does some amazing things. Can't stop talking about transportation because I was at the Slow Cog board meeting on April 1st. One thing to remember that I know it's not surprising, but 2028 is the Olympics in Los Angeles. So we are continuing to work on getting that extra train. That's a big deal. Also, there will be a CTC will host a town hall with commissioners on September 17th through 18th. I know it feels like far away, but I'm pretty sure staff will be attending that in some way, shape, or form. And then we celebrated the Avila Beach Drive roundabout from March 17th. That was a $21 million project. So again, these are big projects that we're working on. We are going to see some pedestrian and bike education pop-ups throughout our county, not so much our city, but our county. And then we have some great activities happening for Bike Month. Slow Cog will, of course, host their normal Bike Month breakfast. We also had a helpful conversation around the Senior Go program. That contract has been extended to July 1st, of 27. So that helps our seniors get access to medical appointments, grocery visits, social activities, and so much more. That was something we weren't sure if we were going to be able to extend for another year, so that's a really big deal. And then on the 22nd, I just want to encourage anyone that cares at all about transportation. There is a Slow Cog workshop at 9:30 in the morning on April 22nd. So if you'd like to go, it'll be the Octagon Barn, and I hope you think about that. Lastly, there's the Transportation Efficiency Analysis, the T. So if you want the T, look at how transportation can support housing and jobs. This is literally what we're talking about. So as far as the economic analysis, they'll be bringing that back on June 2nd. And so that's at Slow Cog. I know June 2nd we'll be talking about, June 3rd, we'll be talking about budget on June 2nd here. But I think as we're talking about how funding is going to come to us, this is really one of the big parts of that. So that's enough about transportation. Thank you so much. Deputy City Manager Herman, up to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. My apologies for not raising this earlier, but we were actually looking for council direction as it relates to the Local Government Climate Alliance, and that is because that's the standard approach that cities use to sort of affirm their membership in that organization, and because they're going to be taking positions on behalf of the city, it's best for us to be able to have a vote on that if possible.
Okay, I was like, we all said yes, we're good to go. I will make the motion for us to join the Local Government Climate Alliance. There is a second. Councilmember Schwarzman.
I'll second it.
Great. Any public comment?
No.
All right, can we have roll call?
Mayor Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwarzman?
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Francis?
Yes.
And the vote passes 4-0. Thank you so much for that. And with that, we will say good night and see you all on Friday for our next ribbon cutting. And then we'll see you back, I believe, on April 21st here in the chambers at 5:30. Have a good night.